Ghost stories have been around since the beginning of storytelling, and I can't imagine our society without them. Ranging from silly sleepover urban legends to haunted location tourism and everything in between, history tales we are doomed to repeat. You either love or you hate the legends. I'm starting today with possibly the most famous ghosty girlie of all time, the White Lady of the Tower of London. Now, this White Lady is a well-known ghost, and she is believed to haunt the chapel of St. Peter ad Vincula. According to ancient legend, the White Lady was once a woman who was wrongly accused of a crime and executed within the tower. There are several tales that claim the origins of her though, including one about a young woman falsely accused of stealing from the Queen's apartments, who was despite her innocence. Another story suggests that the White Lady could be the ghost of Anne Boleyn, who was executed in the Tower in 1536 and was known for wearing white. The White Lady is often described as a serene and beautiful woman with long hair, wandering in a long gown. Many people claim to have seen her kneeling at the chapel altar, and some have reported feeling a sense of calmness or comfort in her presence. She is said to have once stood at a window, waving to people at the building on the other side just to freak them out. She's also known to linger in your peripheral vision, leading you to think somebody's in the room with you until you turn and see nobody. Her presence is typically announced by an overwhelming smell of perfume, so strong that it's actually made several tower visitors sick. A few visitors report being tapped on the shoulder, only to turn around and see nothing but a wisp of white. Despite the lack of historical evidence supporting the existence of the White Lady, her legend is still extremely popular. Even today, visitors and tourists to the Tower of London report sightings of her ghostly figure just wandering around the halls. Hanging out. It's just wild to me that it's been how many years and we still don't know for sure who she is, and nobody has been able to help her move on from this mortal plane and into the next one. She's on my personal bucket list of ghosts I want to meet in person someday. Seriously. Time to take to the seas with our next legend, which also happens to be up there in terms of popularity. The ghost of the Flying Dutchman has been haunting sailors for centuries. This legendary cursed ghost ship is said to be doomed to sail the seas forever without ever reaching port. And the story dates back to the 17th century and has been retold in many forms over the years, with each retelling adding to its haunting allure. According to maritime folklore, the Dutch captain of the Flying Dutchman, try saying that 5 times fast, was cursed for his arrogance and blasphemy. Now, the ghost ship appears as a spectral apparition to other sailors, accompanied by eerie lights and strange sounds. The crew of the Flying Dutchman is said to be made up of ghosts and other supernatural beings, condemned to sail the seas until the end of time. Now, I'm not new to ghost ship stories. I've talked about the Mary Celeste, the Patriot, the Hunley, and more over the last year, but the idea of a ship that just vanishes is terrifying to me. The legend of the Flying Dutchman has also been the inspiration for a lot of works of art, lots of literature, music, film. There's a whole Wikipedia article about the inspirations and adaptations of this legend that includes melodramas, appearances on SpongeBob, Spider-Man cartoons, Disney comic books, a 1951 film, even the Pirates of the Caribbean franchise. Heck, even the Efteling amusement park in the Netherlands has a roller coaster called De Vliegende Hollander, or the Flying Dutchman, which features a captain named Willem van der Decken. It has definitely made its mark on society, and once again, we still don't have concrete knowledge about the ship or its occupants. One of these days, somebody's going to be exploring the ocean and stumble upon the perfect shipwreck that's going to make total sense. Look, somebody needs to tell their descendants to come back to this video in 50 years or something and tell me if I'm right or wrong. Please? Well, there is technically no historical evidence to support the existence of said ship. The legend has endured for centuries and has become an important part of maritime folklore. It's a haunting reminder that the sea is a place of great mystery and wonder, but it's also capable of spawning great horror. Seriously, there's so much about the oceans that we still don't know and might never understand. Which reminds me of the age-old question, which do you fear more, the ocean or space? Since I'm more likely to wind up in an ocean, that's my answer, but you let me know yours in the comments.
Number 3. The Yonauni Monument. You've heard of the lost city of Atlantis, surely. Of course you have. It's one of the best Disney movies you forgot about. That's a story for a whole other video. Well, what if it wasn't the only lost underwater city out there? Have you ever heard of the Yonauni Monument? The Yonauni Monument has sometimes been called Japan's Atlantis, and it refers to a strange, eerie underwater rock formation just off the coast of Yonauni Island in Japan that has had people scratching their heads for years. It's a massive structure consisting of several flat rock slabs arranged in a way that seems like an intelligent life put it together. Now, some people say that this structure could be completely natural, resulting from years of erosion and tectonic activity. Certainly, stranger things have happened, and it wouldn't be completely impossible for something to form this way, but the way it exists now, the way it sits, it seems deliberately carved out, and it seems like it was an important structure to someone. Perhaps a monument, a temple, some sign of a lost city, hence the Atlantis comparisons. Is it possible this was evidence of a lost civilization buried beneath the ocean waves, forever forgotten to history? The monument being completely submerged has been fuel for the fire of speculation. Was it always underwater? Did it end up there over time? Did the water raise around it? Did the land used to look significantly different? It makes it pretty difficult to study as well, making it just that little bit more elusive, as if it wasn't mysterious enough as is. But let's be real, it was probably aliens. It was almost certainly aliens. Number 2, the Bermuda Triangle. The Bermuda Triangle. Now there's an exquisite ancient mystery, one of the certified classics, something that's eluded us for years and will probably continue to do so. It's been referred to before as the Devil's Triangle, and it's host to all manner of mysterious incidents and unexplained phenomena. One of the more infamous incidents linked to the Bermuda Triangle is the disappearance of Flight 19 in December 1945. 5 Navy bombers vanished during a routine training mission alongside 14 crew members. Gone. Zilch. There was an extensive search effort, but nothing was ever found. Not so much as a bolt off the hull, a boot fished up, a hat, nothing. It was as if they were swallowed up by the void. Naturally, people went a bit wild with theories on this one. Anything from aliens, electromagnetic anomalies, alternate realities, no clipping into the back room. You know, pretty serious academic stuff. But it's bizarre. Another particularly good Bermuda baffler for you is the case of the USS Cyclops. In March 1918, the 542-foot-long cargo ship carrying over 300 crew members vanished during its voyage from Barbados. No wreckage, no survivors ever found. Certainly you would think a ship that big with that many people would leave behind a little bit of evidence, right? What happened? Were they swallowed up by the very seas themselves, pulled to Davy Jones's locker by the Kraken? Or are they somewhere we can't reach them, in a place between worlds and time? The region is known for all sorts of weird stuff too, involving electronic malfunctions and compass deviations. It makes it seem like there is just something bad in the air out there. Maybe just bad vibes? Certainly seems that way. And number 1, the Dorset mass grave. Oh, this one is a doozy, and it is one of the scariest and most confusing archaeological discoveries ever found. Let me ask you, what's more fun than a barrel of monkeys? A barrel of Vikings? Well, how about a mass grave full of headless Viking bodies? No? Well, you and I find different things fun, I suppose. Way back in the yesteryear of 2008, a group of archaeologists were on a fairly routine digging operation in Dorset, a quaint little seaside town in England. They were supervising a digging operation to improve local roads and were on set to see if there was anything of note to find, you know, if they came across an old coin or an old arrowhead or something you could stuff in a museum case. For the first few days of the job, there wasn't anything particularly noteworthy discovered until they came across the mass pile of 54 entangled Viking corpses, all missing their heads. I guess they thought that was probably kind of interesting. If it was just a bunch of headless Viking bodies, that'd be one thing. But the mass grave was wrapped in confusing details. Their skulls were missing, but as well their rib cages, arms, and leg bones were all scattered around, this is disgusting, surrounded by discarded teeth. No clothes or weaponry was recovered. So what in the Allfather's name happened here? Because absolutely nothing I can imagine is pleasant. Sounds like Vikings opened up a portal to hell, went really wild with it. The teeth found around the grave had all been filed down neatly, which is very interesting. Now, it goes without saying that Viking dental surgery could not have been painless, meaning the process had to be excruciating, suggesting it was either done by a very careful tormentor or done to themselves to intimidate their opponents to show just how gritty they are. I actually don't know which of those two are preferable. They actually both sound pretty horrible. Now, as good as my theory about a bunch of Vikings opening up a portal to hell and being offered as a sacrifice is, archaeologists had some different ideas. They theorized that by looking at the wound patterns on the ribs and torso, they were surgical precise blows, which wasn't really the kind of thing you'd expect from a rabid Viking warrior flailing around a sword in a brawl. The archaeologists thought that these men were either offered up as part of a horrifyingly sadistic ritual, or it was a big time mass sentencing where everybody was sentenced to the death. Explains too where all the weapons and gear had gone. These men had been brought here from somewhere else and then left here for a long time. We might never know the truth behind the Dorset mass grave, and I'm gonna be honest, that might be fine with me. Some secrets are better left buried. Anyone else feel though that all those Viking skeletons, that might be like the world's most terrifying puzzle to put all that together? Morbid thought, and that's something to end the video on. Number 5, D.B. Cooper. One of the most infamous disappearance cases in history, and I'm gonna be honest, probably my personal favorite unsolved mystery of all time. If you haven't heard the story of the real-life daredevil heister, Mr. D.B. Cooper, you're in for a treat and then some. Depending on your definition of success, you could argue D.B. Cooper might be the most successful criminal in history, since not only did he get off with quite an impressive take, but he got away with all his crimes and avoided capture. If he's still alive, that is. On November 24th, 1971, a man using an alias of Dan Cooper walked up to the ticket counter at Portland International and booked a one-way ticket to Seattle, claiming that he was on business. He was technically correct in that assessment. Once on board the plane, Cooper passed a note to a flight attendant, and he was not asking for an extra bag of peanuts and fluffing his pillow. No, he was just letting the attendant know that he had brought a bomb on board the flight and demanded $200,000 and 4 parachutes. And if he caught a whiff of any funny business, he'd turn this plane into a national tragedy on the 6 o'clock news, see? So, you know, nothing unreasonable really. I make all those demands whenever I'm hangry, pretty normal stuff. So the plane landed in Seattle, as originally planned, and authorities were summoned to deliver the ransom money and parachutes to Cooper. The passengers were relieved and eventually let go, but the flight crew was stuck with their new boss, Mr. Cooper, who'd taken them hostage. Cooper seized the plane, planning a flight path to Mexico City, but midway through the flight, Cooper, who was a huge fan of the film Point Break and wanted to pay homage to it, jumped out of a plane with all of the money. D.B. Cooper jumping out of that plane with a suitcase full of money would be the last time anyone ever saw him. He jumped out of that plane and into the stuff of history book legends, the Hall of Fame of heisters. Move over, Payday Crew, this guy's got you beat. Despite extensive searching, not a hair of D.B. Cooper ever turned up. Some speculate rather bluntly that perhaps he miscalculated the angle and splattered somewhere across the northwest and the heist wasn't as impressive as we thought, while others imagined that he got off easy, he's knocking back Mai Tais on a Hawaiian island, enjoying the spoils of his loot. But who was the guy to begin with? A career crook on one last job? Someone trying it out? Someone snapping? Several theories suggest he was ex-military, special forces, which would explain his proficiency. In fact, the leading hypothesis is that he was ex-military. We may never know who the real D.B. Cooper is, and that's fine. That's the way he'd want it. And if we don't know who he is, it makes it that much more fun for us. He could be any one of us. He could be you. He could be me. He could be... I'll stop talking there. And if you're looking for more scary videos and strange stories out there, we've got all of that and then some. If you can think it up, we've probably done a video or 2 on it. We've got quite the catalog. So click on through, hit subscribe, and please tickle that little bell and make sure you don't miss a single scream. But would you kindly do that at the end of this video, because I got 4 more missing persons cases ready for you now. Number 4, the Mary Celeste. Our next mysterious case is a bit of an outlier, a little bit of a cheat. I know. It's not just one person going missing, it's an entire ship. How does that happen? December 1872, the captain of the Mary Celeste, one Benjamin Briggs, cast off to New York to travel to Italy for unknown reasons, but probably for the tomatoes. The ship was kept to a rather tight crew. A staff of 8, plus Briggs's wife and daughter, were enough to man the vessel. The voyage seemed like it went pretty well until another vessel, the Del Gratia, came into contact with the Celeste and were chilled at what they'd found when they recovered the ship drifting aimlessly. As rescuers boarded the ship, they were greeted with a maritime mystery to forever haunt them. The ship seemed to be in perfect working order, no signs of damage or distress. Had it not been found freely floating, they'd assume the ship was just built. Aside from a single lifeboat missing, the ship was in good condition, the holds stocked with food and water. The crew's personal belongings were scattered about. The table was set for a meal, as if the crew had been minutes away from breaking bread. So what happened? What reasonable captain would abandon a perfectly serviceable, well-stocked ship? Well, reasonable explanations were offered, theories of piracy or mutiny prevailing. Now, the ship being relatively untouched does call into question the notion of piracy, as I don't know how much you know about pirates, but they didn't tend to leave the rum behind if there is any. Any pirate captain worth his salt would have plundered that thing down to the floorboards. And there didn't appear to be any struggle at all, so no forceful evacuation, nobody kicked them off the ship. So with rationale out of the way, we've nowhere left to turn but blind and wild speculation. Theories of supernatural beings, cursed gold, vengeful spirits, sea monsters, Davy Jones. Take your pick of whatever nautical bedtime story you think could have overtaken the Mary Celeste. So you know what? Let me know down below. I love pirate ghost stories more than anything. Perhaps it was a bit of sea madness? Cabin fever? Maybe it's whatever happened to those two guys in the lighthouse happened to them here? No matter how you slice it, the vanishing of the Mary Celeste is a head scratcher of a mystery. More lost souls through the darkness that lurks below the ocean's water. Wary yourselves against the whispers that echo the seas, for the spirits of the Mary Celeste may still be watching, eager to claim another.
At number 3, A858. This made its way onto the internet in 2011, and it's one of Reddit's most puzzling subreddits. So basically this page is dedicated to long and confusing codes that are written in a hexadecimal. This numerical notation system is used in computer programs. So many people have tried to solve these codes, even teaming up with others to try and figure them out. The A858 used to post daily, and very few of their posts have actually been deciphered. But when someone does manage to crack the code, it's usually a random phrase or something else pretty trivial that's being revealed. The meanings of these codes and their purposes in the first place is still a mystery to this day. Maybe the answer lies in one of the uncrackable codes. Coming in at number 2, the Plague Doctor video. So yeah, this video is very strange and altogether creepy. It first appeared online in May of 2015. Basically the video is of this person in a plague doctor's mask, and they are doing some strange movements in an abandoned building. There's some Morse code going on, an odd static tone, and some jump cuts of other videos spliced in. The whole point of this video is unclear, but it's creepy nonetheless. This video is titled 011011011010101, etc. Yeah, it goes on for a while. This binary code translates to Muert, which in Spanish means death. Of course there's a thread devoted to figuring out exactly what's going on in this video, and they revealed that the video apparently contains the coordinates to the White House, some chess moves, disturbing images depicting violence against women, and other random threatening messages. The source of this video is unknown, as the posters claim no connection to the video and maintain that they did not create the video. So yeah, no one knows the point of this video, but nonetheless it's pretty creepy. Alright, and before we jump into our number 1 spot, I just want to remind you guys to please show us some love by giving this video a big thumbs up and subscribing to our channel. And once again, stay tuned until the end of the video as I will be answering your questions. And if you would like to be featured in an upcoming video, then make sure you leave those questions below. And in at number 1, Anonymous. Yes, this is definitely one that needed to be on this list. We've all heard about this group, but if for some reason you are unfamiliar with them, Anonymous was founded in 2003, and it's a group made up of self-proclaimed hacktivists who have basically become a household name over the past several years. This group's goal is to go online and attack governments, government institutions, government agencies, corporations, and the Church of Scientology. The people of this group say that they have a greater good purpose behind their attacks. Most of their attacks took place in 2011 and 2015. They will usually flood websites, forcing them to shut down. The group is also skilled when it comes to finding something their target is sensitive about and using that to their advantage. They recently declared war on ISIS, they flooded its associated websites with porn, and shut down many pages for good. What's even crazier is the anonymous members have been able to keep their identities a secret even after all of these years. The police and government have tried to find out who the members of this group are since they first came out, and still 15 years later they have no idea.
Kicking off at number 5, Coral Castle. And no, that is not my imitation of Rick Grimes trying to call his son a fortified structure. Sorry, that was a terrible joke. But the actual mystery of Coral Castle is equal parts true engineering enigma and equal parts perhaps the most American thing that you've ever heard of. Along the highways and byways of rural America, there are countless tourist attractions that litter the way, but one of them in particular may actually have a much more intriguing mystery than the rest. Just before 1920, a Latvian man named Edward Leedskalnin was jilted by his young bride just a day before their wedding, and so dejected and depressed, Edward left his home country to head to America. Here, after becoming a recluse and discovering a strange affinity for magnetism, Edward spent the next 28 years constructing a bizarre megalithic castle from oolite, a limestone sediment similar to coral. Now, although the vast majority of this structure now is ruinous, which operates as a popular tourist attraction on the roadside, the actual structural properties of Coral Castle have baffled people for decades, given the fact that Leedskalnin worked completely alone, shifting over 1,000 tons of oolite rock into place with no conventional machinery and no other means of hauling such a large amount of minerals and materials. As the legend goes, at one point a few local teenagers claimed to have stumbled upon Leedskalnin working on the structure late at night, reporting that he had caused the blocks of coral to move like hydrogen balloons, floating perfectly into place without the aid of any tools. Strangely enough, this this led to wild rumours that lead scouting was using telekinesis to build the castle, a claim which he refuted. In fact, the only tool that Lee Scowlin ever spoke of using was a machine that he referred to as a perpetual motion holder. Before his death, whenever he was asked how he constructed the place, he simply stated that he understood the laws of weight and leverage well, and on several occasions he stated publicly that he had discovered the secrets of the pyramids, and that once you know how to do it, it's easy. I mean, this one is a little tongue-in-cheek, but what do you guys think? Another eccentric recluse with too much time on his hands, or a structural genius that had insight into a long forgotten knowledge? Let me know. Coming in at number 4, Caspar Hower. And who the hell was Caspar Hower? A mystery that has completely perplexed historians for nearly 2 centuries, leading to an insane web of speculation, an entire network of conspiracy that extends its tendrils all the way to the royalty of Napoleon. On the 26th of May 1828, a teenage boy appeared on the streets of Nuremberg, Germany. His name was Caspar, a boy of 16. He was filthy, could speak only a few words, and had a letter with him addressed to a captain of the Bavarian cavalry. He kept repeating the phrase, "I want to be a cavalryman as my father was," in Old Bavarian, but the city guard dismissed his ramblings and imprisoned him as just another vagabond in Nuremberg Castle. His strange origin drew the attention of the city's mayor, who claimed that despite his stunted appearance, the boy had an excellent memory and was quick to learn. Eventually, after befriending the mayor, Caspar spoke of what he could remember of his life before, and explained in great detail at living totally alone in a darkened cell 2 meters long, 1 meter wide. Each morning, Caspar said, he would wake to find rye bread and water next to his bed. Periodically, he said the water would taste bitter, and after drinking it, he would sleep more heavily than usual, where he'd wake up to find his hair and his nails had been cut. Caspar claimed that the first human he had contact with was a mysterious man dressed in a dark hood, his face completely covered. He taught him to write his name and taught him the same phrase he would repeat when he was found. Eventually, this story led the European aristocracy to believe that Caspar was an exiled prince, held captive for his entire life to prevent a line of succession. As the year passed, Caspar would live and learn in many of the Bavarian noble houses, where allegedly there were many attempts on his life by the same hooded men that he had described in the darkened cell. They got him in the end though, and on the 14th of December 1833 he was mysteriously stabbed and he died 3 days later. On his grave in Latin read the words, "Here lies a mysterious one who was killed in a mysterious manner." Beats me.
In third place, we have the death of Hugh Watson. Alrighty. Time for a bunch of wild facts. So when a barn in Landsworst burned to a crisp in December of 1976, firefighters found the body of a 77-year-old man who lived alone, had no relatives, and was last seen drinking at the local Pennyburn Hotel in Landsworst, which was a location he was known to frequent often. Pardon me, I totally forgot the part where he had been stabbed 22 times with either a pitchfork or a screwdriver, because that's totally normal and not overkill at all. So most theories actually lean more towards the pitchfork theory, and while I get he was found in a barn, that completely boggles my mind. I guess it was a weapon of convenience, but cripes. Detectives have managed to learn that the old man had mobility difficulties and walked with the aid of 2 sticks, so they believed he must have been carried into the hayloft where he later died, since he never really could have climbed up there by himself. A post-mortem investigation revealed that some of his wounds were serious, but others were superficial, suggesting that whoever committed the crime spent some time in the barn with them. That same investigation found he died from asphyxia, and over 6,000 people were interviewed in hopes of some kind of information coming to light. Detectives were drafted in from across the region to trace anyone who saw him that night, but so far, we got nothing. Who knows? In second place, we have Taggy. I swear, people need to get a lot more creative with naming their river monsters. So many monikers are just poor knockoffs of Nessie, and unknown creatures deserve better than being the equivalent of a dollar store knockoff toy. Just saying. Located in Lintigid, or Bala Lake in English, lies the legend of Taggy. Look, I'm gonna go for the English versions, folks. You've heard me butcher enough. First spotted in 1975, Taggy is thought to be an amphibian around 12 feet in length, described as a grayish brown or black in color, and typically between 8 to 12 feet long. This mysterious animal is believed to have 1 or 2 humps, a long neck, and a roundish football-sized head with a crocodilian snout. So there have been sightings throughout the years, but kind of like Nessie, nothing super substantial. A witness in 1975 claims that out of nowhere she saw a grayish object moving in the water, and whatever it was at least 8 feet long and had a small hump in the middle and was moving towards the eastern shore. So when she jumped into her car and drove to the point where she thought the object would come ashore, no sign of her. And when people pressed this witness afterwards for a description, she told them it looked like closest to a crocodile. She returned to Bella Lake the following day and found a very large dead pike on the shore with massive bite marks on it that are believed to have been left by Taggy. So another witness, going by B. Vickers, reported spotting the monster at close range in the summer of 1992. She said it was twilight when she was on the shingle beach of the lake in front of the Catamaran Club, looking for flat stones to skim over the lake's calm surface, when she suddenly turned a full 80 degrees and looked straight at the monster, who was looking right back at her. So at 20 meters away, with its black head and neck clear above the surface of the water. Ooh, fun fact time! One expert has a theory that Taggy can move overland when necessary to feed or breed in other bodies of water or use rivers, which connect to other lakes and the sea to find fresh feeding grounds or, a mate. It's also believed that she could be nocturnal. It's also believed that she could be, like a nocturnal hunter, protected by the darkness and minimal nighttime lighting that is common in rural areas of the UK. Perfect conditions for a shy and elusive creature. Hey look, this all matches up with what I've been saying about introverted sea creatures. Let them have their privacy. In first place, we have the disappearance of Trevelyan Evans. So normally when a shopkeeper puts up a sign saying they'll be back in 2 minutes, they'll be back within the hour. Right? Well, this shop owner and antique dealer, Trevelyan Evans, put up this sign in 1990 and, she hasn't come back. Longest lunch break ever, honestly. So she had been away during the week of her disappearance with her husband Richard, who was renovating the couple's holiday bungalow, and returned to Llangollen on Wednesday, the 13th of June. Fast forward to Saturday, the 16th, she opened her shop, Attic Antiques on Church Street, at the usual time of 9:30 a.m. and had parked her dark blue Ford Escort Estate 200 yards away. And for people like me who are completely vehicle clueless, notice how I stumbled over that because vehicles is just a 90s long blue car. Laugh all you want, but I constantly vex my dad with how little I can verify any type of vehicle, even though I've been surrounded with car knowledge since birth. It's not in the brain. So during the morning, approximately 25 friends and customers had called in, and according to the friends who visited, she appeared, relaxed, happy, and heck, she even made plans to go out that night. And the weather that day was sunny, according to the police, and the town center was described as, busy. At about 12:40 p.m., she left a note on the front door of her shop saying, back in 2 minutes. A well-dressed man was reportedly seen talking to her in the shop shortly before she left the note, but his identity was never confirmed. It is known that she bought an apple and a banana and was seen crossing the nearby Castle Street. Apparently, a banana skin was found in a dustbin in the shop after this time, so it's thought she must have returned there, but it was never confirmed. Her handbag, car keys, and jacket, along with fruit and flowers that she intended to take home, were left behind in her shop, and the car stayed parked where it was. There were 2 more suspected sightings, but both were unconfirmed. So let's dive into this. At 2:35 p.m., a woman matching her description was seen walking out of town along the A5 towards Corwin, beside the Riverside Park. At 3:45 p.m., there was another sighting, this time of a woman walking into Park Avenue from the direction of the River Dee. More than 1,500 names were investigated, and about 700 cars were eliminated from the inquiry. Searches of the river, the canal, mine shafts, and caves in the area were carried out, but nothing. In January of 2001, the case was reopened by police in the hope, new forensic techniques would suggest fresh evidence, but only led to a series of false arrests, including her husband. The case was re-examined in 2010 on the 20th anniversary of her disappearance, but we got nothing. No money was ever taken from her bank account, indicating to the police that she might have been abducted and killed. But the curious thing, she left so much behind, so she clearly thought she wasn't going to be long. And once again, the car was parked less than 100 feet away and stayed there. To this day, the case remains open, with calls for information still being asked for over 30 years later. Hey look, stranger things have happened. I remember back in 2009 hearing about a missing youngling case from the 70s that was finally solved thanks to a deathbed confession. That's the thing. Someone obviously saw something or was involved. Well, you just gotta wait for that person to come forward.
Kicking off at number 5, Stone Tongue. Which again is a pretty damn awesome name for a death metal band, right? But if you're a fan of this series, you'll already know that lists like these are literal golden skull mines for naming yourselves in all your death metal glory. So metalheads that are looking for a band name, take note, please. And also, thank me later. Anyway, stone tongue. Let's first cast our gaze back to 1991 in Northamptonshire, Britain, where archaeologists discovered a gruesome and even stranger mutilation that emerged from the remains of Roman Britain. Now, it's no hidden secret that Britain is littered with instances of intrigue from the Roman occupation of Britain, but this one in particular seemingly doesn't fit any sort of logic, or any of the many other mysteries of ancient Britain. At the bottom of a burial pit, buried beneath dozens of other bodies, archaeologists found the skeleton of a man whose tongue had apparently been amputated and instead replaced with a flat stone wedged into his mouth. The burial site at Stanwick near the River Nene dates back from between the 3rd or 4th centuries, where people in Roman Britain would have congregated in small farming communities. Now, it's certainly not rare to find makeshift burial pits in Roman Britain. In fact, they are a dime a dozen. But the strange thing was, this guy was buried at the bottom, face down. And not only was he buried face down, which would usually indicate some sort of fear of him by the community, but his tongue was cut out and replaced with a stone. As researchers noted, this was something that just hasn't ever been identified as a practice so far in archaeological records. There are no other known occurrences of this ever happening in Roman Britain, so far anyway. And the fact that this was on top of the matter of him being buried face down, well, who the hell was he? What was he doing? It is believed that the man would have been in his 30s at the time of his death, and one theory is that he had mental health issues and was actually responsible for severing his own tongue. Perhaps the tongue was the community symbolically making him whole again, but then why was he buried face down? Now, archaeologists are currently trying to correlate this practice to ancient Germanic laws, but its place in a small farming community in Roman Britain, yeah, that remains a complete and utter mystery. Swinging in at number 4, Khabib. And I absolutely love this one, as well as pretty much all of the next few entries, because nothing gets my mind whirring quite like an ancient structure that no one knows what the hell it is, or what it was doing, or why it was even there. Let me introduce you to the Khabib, an ancient wall in southern Jordan that, since its identification by British diplomat Sir Alec Kirkbride back in 1948, has had archaeologists scratching their heads ever since. I say identification because Kirkbride certainly didn't discover this structure per se, but instead he noticed that whilst he was flying over Jordan, there was a very apparent and very clear line across the geographical landscape. A wall, in fact, that ran 150 kilometers, making it the longest linear archaeological site in Jordan. Now, why would anyone build a wall of such length? Now, the Romans had reason to with the Picts, ancient China had reason to with Genghis Khan, but Khabib? What's that all about? The thing is though, whilst the purpose of this wall is the frantic subject of debate, we do know who built it. The semi-nomadic Bedouin people led by the Arab prince Amir Khabib. Historically, there is a certain recognition of the Bedouin people using the wall, but there is still no concrete evidence to determine its purpose. Archaeologists during the 1940s and 1950s argued that the Khabib was used for military and defense purposes. However, there is a clear problem with that assumption. This wall is far too low for it to have ever been a successful defensive mechanism, and although it is massive in length, at best estimates it stood at around just 1.5 meters high. What was it keeping out? Not a lot. So then why have archaeologists also discovered over 100 ruined towers across its span? Yeah, more and more questions. Oh, and also, did I mention that best estimates point toward it being built in the Iron Age? Yeah, Khabib, everybody. A complete and utter mystery.
Number 3, the Queen Mary. Now this next one is a beloved tourist spot. It's one of the most famous ships in the country, and there are few ships in the United States even half as haunted as the Queen Mary, a decommissioned ship that was converted into a hotel in Long Beach, California. It's stately, it's lush, it's got all the comfort and modern amenities of being a Navy man, bursting with restless spirits. The ship was christened in the mid-30s by the Queen Mary herself. That's why they named her that. And it was retired 3 decades later. It's since been converted into a hotel where guests can go and rent out a stateroom and pretend they're crossing the Atlantic in style. Now, there are a variety of spots inside the Queen Mary that are said to be congregation points for all things supernatural and strange. Perhaps if you know already anything about the Queen Mary, the most famous is Stateroom B340. Now, this was a problem before the place was even haunted. In 1948, a passenger, Walter J. Adamson, passed away in the room under unknown conditions. Nothing really came of this event until 1960. 1866 when a woman who was staying in B340 reported that she was woken up when the bed covers were pulled away and she saw a spectral man standing at the foot of her bed, and it was no room service. She screamed and rang for a steward, but as soon as the steward arrived to assess the situation, the man had vanished. Now, guests staying in this room claim they hear someone knock at the door in the middle of the night. The Mary's maids too complain that they find water running in B340 when no one's been in it in days. People have reported all kinds of ghosts around the pool as well. There's a woman in an old wedding gown people say they see, a young boy in a suit, a cloud of steam appearing out of nowhere, and then a girl in a blue and white dress who disappears in an instant. Or maybe it's a gold and black dress, I'm not sure. Whatever the case, there's so many ghosts up in the Queen Mary, it's definitely worth checking out if you've got an EMF reader in your suitcase when you're going to California. Number 2, Griffith Park. Now, if you're a real avid cinephile, a student of the silver screen, perhaps you'd recognize Griffith Park for its use in a ton of Hollywood productions. The sprawling, rugged, mountainous set is home to a lot more than memorabilia for Hollywood. It's also said to be home to spirits and haunted by a century-old curse. It's said to have started all the way back in 1863, when Donna Petronilla, the niece of land baron Don Antonio Feliz, was cut out of her will. She was spurned and placed a hex on his land and cursed him for this indignation. She vowed that the land would never turn a profit for him, and that as long as he lived there, he would suffer misfortune until his untimely death, and anyone who was stupid enough to own the land afterward would get the same treatment. Now, local historians say the man who negotiated the ranch's rights was slain in a saloon duel, and the land's new owner was fatally struck by bandits in Mexico, so not looking good. A wealthy industrialist would end up buying up 4,000 acres of the land in the 1880s, but he ended up donating the land to the city of LA after strife and all sorts of malfeasances were causing problems with his ownership. He ended up striking his wife in a rampage. Now, she survived, but he went to prison for 2 years and passed away almost immediately after his release. Pretty suspicious, pretty strange. The landowners all died in rags, their reputation tarnished, and now that it's LA property, Griffith Park wasn't making anyone particularly rich. Was Donna Petronilla's curse that effective, or just a series of sheer coincidences? There are some who say Donna still watches over the land, ensuring her vengeance is carried out forever. Some visitors to Griffith Park claim that they see her spirit haunting the ground. Her vengeful ghost is said to appear as a lady in an all-white dress who materializes before locals for a moment. And number 1, Mount Shasta. Standing nearly 15,000 feet in the air, Mount Shasta is a beautiful peak. And, if you believe the legends, it could be home to some of the strangest thing in the entire country. Really, just about every conspiracy theory out there has been leveled to this mountain at one point. We got UFO sightings, strange disappearances, paranormal hauntings, a lost city, lizard people. If there is a conspiracy about something strange happening in California, the odds are good it'll eventually reach Mount Shasta. It's even true of GTA 5. You look up Mount Iliad, there's so many weird mysteries going on there. Virtual, real, it's everywhere. The history of mystery at the history of mystery. That rolls off the tongue beauty. The history of mystery. I'm gonna say that like 12 times. Sorry, editor. The history of mystery at Shasta goes back pretty far to the indigenous roots of the area. For the indigenous groups there, the mountain is a sacred place, sharing the territories of the Shasta, Wintu, Achimawai, Atsagewi, and Modoc, who all date their lineage back to when the mountain still erupted. Oh, it was a volcano. I kind of slid that under the door, but this thing used to like shoot lava. To the Modoc people, the mountain is home to the Gamakma, the creator in their stories, and where the original bones of the Modoc people were first placed. Some observers still bring offerings to the mountain and to the old gods who are thought to reside over there. Tales of mythical creatures like Sasquatch are fairly common around the area and have been for years too, but like I said, that is just the tip of all the weirdness that's going on out here. One of the more interesting mysteries, and definitely the one I find most interesting, come out of Shasta is that of a lost city. There are some who speak of Lemuria, a theorized continent believed to have sunk over the Indian or Pacific Ocean. Theorists claim that some people survived this catastrophe and now the Lemurians live below Mount Shasta, presumably waiting until they can come and take over the earth, or maybe they're just chilling with advanced technology. Who's to say? This is where the lizard people come in, because there are people who believe that the Lemurians are actually the fabled lizard people. They live under Mount Shasta, and this is where they come to have meetings about what rap stars they're going to endorse to control the Illuminati. Of course, there's also the claims of UFO sightings. One particular flying saucer seen in February 2020 2020 made rounds when a cloud in the sky looked exactly like a flying saucer, copying Jordan Peele's Nope. Officials denied it as just a lenticular cloud, but hey, take a look and decide for yourself because it's definitely odd. So Mount Shasta, nothing but a good trail to hike up, or is it a home to a series of mysteries, bubbling and bursting, just waiting to erupt?
Kicking off at number 5, the tomb of Antony and Cleopatra. Now, the legendary Roman politician and general Marcus Antonius, alongside his kindred spirit Cleopatra, may well be the most notorious lovers in the history of our civilization, and although mountains upon mountains of literature have been written about their star-crossed fate, the real mystery of Antony and Cleopatra came after they had both slipped from this mortal coil. Now, if you know anything about the Roman conquest of Egypt, you'll know that around 30 BC, Mark Antony and Cleopatra were not in the Romans' best books, and a general known as Octavian had waged a long and bloody campaign to bring Cleopatra's reign to an end, which he ultimately won, but sadly for us, that's where the trail runs cold, with no leads as to the two lovers' final resting place. One of the greatest unsolved mysteries in antiquity is the exact location of the final burial place of Antony and Cleopatra, but according to several ancient historians, Tonius and Plutarch to name a few, it was recorded that Octavian had permitted the two to be buried together as their surviving children were taken back to Rome to be raised as Roman citizens. There are several leads that their tomb was located somewhere west of Alexandria, but numerous excavations throughout history have proven fruitless. However, they did come close, and between 2008 and 2009, reports of the prestigious Egyptologist Zahi Hawass having found evidence of their fated tomb came to light. Although no concrete evidence has been unearthed, relics and memorial coins of the lovers have been found in small ceremonial tombs, perhaps pointing toward Cleopatra's and Antony's tomb being somewhere in the vicinity. The excavation continues, but whoever stumbles upon the tomb of Antony and Cleopatra will unearth one of history's greatest mysteries. Next up at number 4, the Sack of Baltimore. And now I love this particular entry, partly for its many layers and potential implications, but mainly for the fact that it's a swashbuckling tale of chaos and carnage that seemingly came out of nowhere. On June 20th, 1631, a small village named Baltimore in West Cork of Ireland was randomly and viciously attacked by pirates. Not just any pirates though, but pirates from the Barbary coast of North Africa, which at the time was synonymous with the Ottoman Empire. Now, if you couldn't tell, that's quite a distance. This incident would go down as the largest attack by Barbary pirates in both Ireland and Great Britain, and seemingly the target was a tiny village tucked in the corner of the Emerald Isle. So it posed the glaring question, why? Was it just a random chance of opportunity after the pirates had drifted off course? Perhaps, but it's not likely. See, the attack was led by a Dutch captain by the name of Jan Jansvoon van Haarlem, who had changed his name to Murad Rees the Younger, which, if you can't tell, is a bit of a curveball. But that curveball may have actually been thrown by someone else entirely. You see, despite being a small village, Baltimore was actually in the middle of a power play. At the time, it was under the control of a Gaelic chieftain, Sir Finian O'Driscoll, but the nearby English colony of Cork, led by a man named Sir Walter Coppinger, also had Baltimore in his sights. History is unclear as to who pulled which string, but all signs point toward the bizarre pirate attack being orchestrated by someone else entirely, in the hopes of seizing power away from O'Driscoll. In fact, several texts have even suggested that O'Driscoll's own relatives may have orchestrated the move, as they'd been exiled to Spain following defeat at the Battle of Kinsale. Whoever did it overestimated the bloodthirst of the Barbary pirates though, because following the raid, Baltimore was virtually deserted for several generations. The best laid plans of mice and men, yeah, you know what they say.
Number 3, UFO sighting. In December 29, 1980, Betty Cash saw something on the outskirts of Houston near Dayton that would change the course of her life forever, as she made a close encounter of the third kind. She was driving her friend Vicki Landrum and Landrum's grandson home one night at 9 p.m. when the three of them noticed a bright light in the sky. Betty Cash described it like this: "We didn't know what it was, but we knew there was something that was lighting up the sky. We all began to feel heat, and all of a sudden Vicki screamed for me to stop. When I stopped, I went forward and her handprint was embedded in the dash of the car, and I thought, well, I've got to see what this is. So I got out, I walked towards the front of the car, and I stood there looking up, trying to figure out what this object was. Then a diamond-shaped object appeared with flames shooting out. The heat was tremendous. When I reached for the door handle, the door was so hot I couldn't even begin to open it. The only thing I was thinking was, are we gonna get out of here alive? And then seemingly as soon as it appeared, it disappeared, and Landrum stated that moments later, a large squadron of black helicopters soared over the area. After the choppers cleared, Betty took the Landrums home and retired for the night. The next morning, however, Cash said she was extremely sick, suffering from nausea, vomiting, diarrhea, weakness, and an intense burning in her eyes. Now here's where things get curious. Landrum and her grandson all reported the exact same symptoms. Over the next few days, Cash said her symptoms worsened so much, with large blisters forming on her skin, she eventually had to be taken to a hospital where she was treated for radiation poisoning, and she lost large patches of skin and clumps of hair. To date, there has never been a conclusive answer to what happened to Cash and Landrum. The US government denied any involvement and said they don't have any diamond-shaped crafts like that in their fleet, and it wasn't from their government. Was the military testing new technology on unsuspecting victims? Was it a craft from another world touching down for a moment? There are so few answers and so many questions for this unsolved mystery. Number 2, the death fields. There is a stretch of I-45 highway between Houston and Galveston that is notorious to locals due to the string of violent, horrific crimes that have all occurred there since the 1970s. Since the first body was discovered, it's been thought that anywhere from 33 bodies have been discovered there, and the truly horrifying thing is how little police and authorities seem to have on this case. Initially, detectives believed that this work was that of a serial killer, due to the sheer number of bodies being found in the area, but over time some have wondered if it could be multiple criminals. Most of the victims have been young women, typically around college ages. The FBI has said that the agency's behavioral experts have created a profile of a possible killer, but there are no known witnesses to any of the crimes and no common person to connect them all. An official statement that was given by the FBI said that the signs point to one killer, although multiple killers can't be ruled out. Given the nature of the area where the bodies were found, it was likely someone with roots in the area, someone who would have known these fields were a good place to hide a body. In 1998, a man named Edward Howard Bell was arrested and claimed to have been involved in the deaths of 11 girls in Galveston County. And although he was a suspect in the aforementioned I-45 case, police unfortunately didn't have enough evidence to tie him to those larger crimes. Only one death on the I-45 was ever convicted, when Louisiana police arrested Kevin Edison Smith in 2009 on a completely unrelated charge. A DNA test found that it matched the body of a girl who had disappeared from Texas in 1996 and whose body was tragically found on the I-45. From this confession and conviction from two different criminals, it's suspected that multiple people were involved in these grisly crimes. Hopefully one day this case can be closed for good and the I-45 can go back to just being a highway. And number 1, the servant girl annihilator. Perhaps one of the most infamous criminals to ever live in Austin, and to this day is still anonymous and possibly will forever. The servant girl annihilator, absolutely brutally named, I cannot believe they called him that, was a serial killer who preyed on young women in Austin between 1884 and 85. He is thought by some to be America's first serial killer, hardly a badge of honor if you ask me. He attacked wantonly, and despite his name, he was not exclusively targeting women. He fatally attacked 7 women, 1 man, and additionally seriously injured 6 women and 2 men. All of his victims he would attack indoors while asleep and then would finish the job outside, leaving them to be found. His victims were all posed in similar manners and were all found with a sharp object inserted into their ears. Texan lawman started a manhunt for the criminal, arresting 400 men in the year of 85 in a desperate attempt for any leads on who was terrorizing the community. Interestingly, the top theory of elected officials at the time was that the servant girl annihilator couldn't possibly have been committing all of these crimes by himself as one lone deranged criminal, but rather an identity shared by a group of men carrying out heinous acts all together. Now, in the end, no one was ever successfully accused of being the servant girl annihilator. And what happened to him was additional police patrols and civilian militias around Austin ended up scaring the annihilator off. Or so you think. A theory, although an outlandish one, is that the servant girl annihilator would move to London to continue his crimes, as 3 years later, the Whitechapel killings would start and Jack the Ripper would terrorize the streets of London, leading to some people suspecting that maybe these 2 lunatics were connected in a way. Think about that, a globe-trotting serial killer wasn't content with just one, had to move, get 2 different scary nicknames. Imagine if both your nicknames were servant girl annihilator and Jack the Ripper, a little much for one guy. if you ask me.
In at 5, Dear David. On August 7th, 2017, Adam Ellis took to Twitter to tell his terrifying encounter with a ghost named David. It began on a Monday, I quote, "So my apartment is currently being haunted by the ghost of a dead child and he's trying to kill me. He started appearing in dreams, but I think he's crossed over into the real world now. The first time I saw him, I was experiencing sleep paralysis and saw a child sitting in the green rocking chair at the foot of my bed. He had a huge misshapen head that was dented on one side. For a while he just stared at me, but then he got out of the chair and started shambling towards the bed. I couldn't move because I was paralysed. Right before he reached my bed, I woke up screaming. I had another dream a few nights later where I was in a library and a girl came up to me and said, 'You've seen Dear David, haven't you?' I was like, 'Who?' And she said, 'Dear David, you saw him.' She continued, 'He's dead, he only appears at midnight and you can ask him 2 questions if you said Dear David first.' Then she added, 'But never try to ask him a 3rd question, or he'll kill you.' I was very shaken. Having 2 dreams about the same thing is pretty weird. Anyway, a couple weeks passed without incident, then David came back in another dream. Same situation, I was in bed and he was sitting in the rocking chair near the window, staring at me. In the dream I say, 'Dear David, how did you die?' He mumbles, 'An accident in a store.' I say, 'Dear David, what happened in the store?' He groans. 'A shelf was pushed on my head.' I'm frozen with fear. I ask, 'Who pushed the shelf?' David doesn't answer. I realise that I've asked a 3rd question, which I'm not supposed to do. At that point I wake up absolutely terrified. The next couple of days I Google deaths in the city but can't find anything about a kid named David dying in a store. Even try different names, Daniel, Dylan, Devon, nothing. A few weeks go by without incident. Sort of randomly the apartment above mine is vacated and I have the opportunity to move into it. It's a larger apartment, so I'm thrilled. Another month or 2 goes by and I sort of forget about Dear David. I think he lost track of me because I moved upstairs. But lately something strange is happening. For the last 4 nights my cats gather at the front door at exactly midnight and just stare at it, almost like something is on the other side. And that's where I am right now. Dear David found me, I think. I don't know what to do. I'll keep you updated. And that he did. Dear David continued for over a year. The story is long but so terrifying and I wish I could read the entire thing out, but that would take hours and everyone would hate me. But we'll link it below. In at 4, Full Heart, Wet Hands. Now this story was submitted to the website My Uni Days by author Alex, who says, I quote, "So, I used to live at this address." They blacked it out. "The houses were built to house the people building the railway in Derby in the 1800s. I only found this out after I left the house, thankfully. It was a creepy house, really foreboding, and every time I washed my hair in the shower, every time I opened my eyes, I expected something to be there. Anyway, I came back from an afternoon lecture. I opened the door, walked up the first flight of stairs and saw a wet handprint on the floor. A really wet handprint. I was a bit like, very strange. At that moment, but I didn't freak out. It was just out of the ordinary. So I walked up to see my housemate, Ed. I opened the door and he was on the phone to his girlfriend. Not crying, but massively in distress. That was when the penny dropped. He then told me that as he was walking up the stairs earlier carrying a glass of water, he felt something cold go through him, almost a push, causing him to drop the water. He picked up the glass and ran up the stairs to his room. The water falling out the glass had created a handprint on the floor. Literally a handprint. Every digit was in proportion. I did freak out at this moment as I'd put the 2 and 2 together. I told everyone to get out of the house, which we did, but then sheepishly returned after a FIFA session around another friend's house. It was genuinely terrifying. Might not sound it, but it was. And all true. If someone offered me $50 to go back and spend the night there by myself, despite the fact that I lived there for a year without almost no incident, I wouldn't. There was something there that didn't want 6 college guys there. This is truly terrifying and I likely would have done the same thing. Run. Something was clearly lingering in the home that wasn't at ease. Now the handprint has the potential of making, but the sensation of a person pushing you, now that is something else entirely. No thank you. Also, you'd have to pay me more than $50 to go back.
And at number 3 is the USS Cyclops. The USS Cyclops was one of 4 bulk cargo ships built for the United States Navy a few years before the beginning of World War I. It gets its namesake from the Cyclops, a race of one-eyed giants from Greek mythology. The whopping 542-foot collier set sail from Rio de Janeiro, Brazil on February 16, 1918, carrying a cargo of manganese ore bound for Baltimore, Maryland. It was due to arrive at its destination by the 13th of March. The ship, under the command command of Lieutenant Commander George W. Worley had a crew of 309 officers and men on board. The ship, having been built in 1910, was not on its first journey. In fact, this was a trip the boat had made many times before, and one its crew was very familiar with. However, there were a couple problems with the ship. One was that the ship was struggling with engine trouble after departing, and the other was that the ship was carrying too much cargo, leaving it to be overloaded. The crew did not see these issues glaring enough to delay their journey and made their way through the Atlantic anyway. Time would fly and the boat's journey seemed to be going as planned, the Cyclops being last seen by another vessel only 4 days before their date of arrival. Yet, there were no reports of the cargo ship reaching its intended destination of Baltimore. In fact, the ship was nowhere to be found, and contact with the rest of the US Navy and the world had been completely cut off. This was during World War I. The original assumption of most was that the USS Cyclops had been destroyed in combat. However, there was never a distress signal sent from the ship, nor were any remains found of the ship. Even after a thorough search of the area it was last known to be, these remains were still not found. It had completely disappeared. Reports indicate that there was a violent storm around the area that the military vessel would have been a day after it was last seen. A common theory behind the USS Cyclops vanishing is that the terrible storm sank the boat, as it was already suffering from engine troubles and was overloaded with cargo. Though, that still doesn't explain the lack of any remains or signals sent by the crew, but the mystery doesn't end there. The same exact vanishing would happen to two of the Cyclops' sister ships, Proteus and Nereus, during World War II. They would both disappear without a trace like the Cyclops before them, both within the Bermuda Triangle. Speaking of World War II, is Flight 19 at our number 2 spot. Flight 19 is the codename of a training mission that would happen on December 5th, 1945. It was comprised of 5 bomber planes taken from the Naval Air Station Fort Lauderdale in Florida. Flight 19 was tasked with navigating a triangular route over the Atlantic, known as the navigation problem number 1, before returning to base. Weather conditions were reported to be clear skies and calm winds. Sounds simple enough, right? Think again. Because shortly after takeoff, radio transmissions from the 5 torpedo bombers indicated the pilots were disoriented. They claimed that they couldn't identify their location at all. The flight instructor at the time, Lieutenant Taylor, told the team that he believed that they were flying over the Florida Keys, an incorrect calculation that would send them off course and towards the Bermuda Triangle. Radio control would continue to try guiding the pilots back to base, but things started to go wrong when radio contact with Flight 19 suddenly came to a stop. I'm sure by now you know the story. A massive search and rescue operation was launched involving several aircrafts and ships, but no trace of Flight 19 was found. In fact, during the search for Flight 19, another aircraft vanished without a trace, adding to the mystery. Many blame the disappearance of Flight 19 on natural magnetic anomalies and unexpected storms, but the truth to where those 14 crew members on the training mission went remains unknown. With all these disappearances across the years, it begs the question of where all these boats and planes are disappearing to. Do you guys have any theories? Let me know in the comments. And topping it all off at number 1 is none other than the Ellen Austin. The Ellen Austin was a massive 3-masted American schooner built in 1854. The vessel would regularly ply between London, England and New York, crossing through the Bermuda Triangle. It wouldn't be until 1881, during another London to New York trip, would the Ellen Austin and its crew come across another ship on the Atlantic. This unknown ship was seemingly adrift and unmanned, so the crew of the Ellen Austin boarded the abandoned ship to investigate. The crew found that the ship was in perfect condition, but completely empty, raising questions as to why it was abandoned in the first place. After this discovery, the crew of the Ellen Austin decided to split their crew and tow the ship in order to salvage it and make some extra money. During this towing, the two vessels were hit by an unexpected storm, separating them from each other. However, the Ellen Austin and the abandoned ship would find each other again. However, the abandoned ship was vacant once again. The crew of the Ellen Austin would try to tow the ship again, but much to their dismay, the same exact thing would happen. Big storm, the ship gets separated, and the crew is completely gone, with the ship still intact. And before they could find the ship again, what little was left of the Ellen Austin's crew would depart hastily, in fear of this cursed abandoned ship. This mysterious ship and its disappearing crew members quickly became a legend of the Bermuda Triangle, as reports of seeing the same abandoned ship were made, not only years, but centuries later, still in perfect condition. The true origins of this mysterious ship remain unknown, but it is said that the ship is an embodiment of the Bermuda Triangle's curse, vanishing any seafarer that tries to board it. But honestly, it's got nothing on any of the crazy pirates you see in Pirates of the Caribbean, so there's that at least, right?
Coming in at 5, Hotel Monte Vista, Arizona. Hotel Monte Vista is a famous and historic hotel located 1 block north of US Route 66 in Flagstaff, Arizona. The hotel was built back in 1927 and is a centerpiece of the historic downtown district. However, it's become more popular for the otherworldly goings-on inside its walls. Guests who have stayed in room 220 have experienced the TV changing channels tunnels on its own, and some even said they felt cold hands touching them while they slept. However, arguably the most popular ghost story to emerge from the hotel is that of the phantom bellboy, who is said to knock on doors and announce room service, but when guests open their doors no one's there. Another popular haunting, and perhaps one of the most disturbing, is the sound of an infant crying in the basement. I quote, "Staff have found themselves running upstairs to escape the sound of the cries. Though the sounds are very real to those who hear them, there's been no information that has explained the phenomenon." That is a direct quote from the hotel's website. Spooky. Would you dare stay there? Coming in at 4, Ariana Grande's haunting. Now, we have a Hollywood ghost story at this number coming from the mouth of none other than Ariana Grande. Yep, that's right. Ariana Grande was supposedly haunted by a ghost back in 2013 when she visited Stull Cemetery in Kansas, a place that is supposedly so scary the Pope refuses to fly over it because it's reputed to be one of the 7 gates to hell. Yeah. Ariana explained to Complex, I quote, "I felt this sick, overwhelming feeling of negativity over the whole car, and we smelled sulfur, which is the sign of a demon, and there was a fly in the car, randomly, which is another sign of a demon." That sounds like a stretch to me. "I was like, this is scary, let's leave." I rolled down the window before we left and said, "We apologize, we didn't mean to disrupt your peace." Then I took a picture, and there are 3 super distinct faces in the picture. They are faces of textbook demons. Now the story gets even creepier. Stick with me. According to Ariana, when she tried to send the picture to her manager the next day, she was met with an error message that read, "This file can't be sent. It's 666 megabytes." Weird things began to occur following the incident, and Ariana was forced to delete the picture. I quote, "I was going to sleep about 2 weeks ago. I had just gotten off the phone, and as soon as I closed my eyes I heard this really loud rumble right next to my head. When I opened my eyes it stopped immediately, but when I closed my eyes it started again with whispers. Every time I closed my eyes I started seeing these really disturbing images with red shapes. Then I opened my eyes and scooched over to the left side of my bed, and there was this massive black matter. I don't know what it was like a cloud of something black right next to me. I started crying. I watched it move to the front of my bed and then I fell asleep. I woke up and it was gone." Now, I'll be honest, it's hard for me to believe this one without the evidence to back it up, but if Ariana says it happened, then I guess it happened.
Number 3. The mystery ships of the Great Lakes. Everybody knows about the Bermuda Triangle swallowing ships and planes, but the mystery ships of the Great Lakes is a less known and equally perplexing mystery. Dating all the way back to the 1700s, thousands of ships are assumed to have disappeared or met their demise while traveling across the lakes. To many minds, the ground amount of sinkings is a result of the dangerous weather conditions that the lake provides, and there is no further mystery behind it. But the disappearances are where curious minds begin to wonder that it may not have been so simple. Since the 1700s, boats have traversed the waters of the Great Lakes. They were excellent sources of freshwater, fish, and natural resources. The lakes had powerful winds, which propelled the boats forward, providing sailors with a fast way to arrive at their destination. And since the 1800s, ships have been sinking and disappearing without a trace. In 1881, the ship of Thomas Hume disappeared. In 1921, the Rosabelle was found floating upside down, empty of all passengers. It looked as though the Rosabelle had collided with another ship, but no other ship was ever recovered, and the cause of the wreckage was never found. Lake Michigan has a space known as the Michigan Triangle, and like the Bermuda Triangle, it is known as a hotspot for sinking planes and ships. In the 1940s, over 120 planes crashed and sank into Lake Michigan. About 40 of them were recovered. In 1950, a commercial flight flying over Lake Michigan, carrying over 50 people, had a small bout of turbulence before completely disappearing. Over 70 years later, the flight has still not been found. Number 4. The Lost Lemon Mine. One of the most interesting mysteries of the Canadian Rockies is the Lost Lemon Mine. There are many different versions of the story, ranging from insanity, curses, and killing, to outlaws, massacres, and robberies. No matter the differences of the story's specifics, all tales share an agreement on the most crucial piece of information. Somewhere in the Canadian Rockies is a lost gold mine. Many people have scoured the Rockies in search for the elusive mine that promises bouts of fortune and riches, but almost all of their expeditions have ended in horrific tragedies. The first expedition in the search of the mine took place in spring of 1870 with 2 men, known as Lemon and Blackjack. The 2 men men eventually came across a face of the mountains that was covered in solid gold. The men began to argue over whether they should take the gold now or return in a warmer season for it. Blackjack grew tired of the disagreement and fell asleep, but Lemon stayed awake, tossing and turning with anger. In a rage of fury, Lemon took his partner's life with an axe and began to hear noises coming from the woods. Lemon grew fearful that his partner was haunting him, and so he left the mountains in an attempt to escape the torment. Lemon searched for the mine for years, but the further into the mountains he went, the more voices and torment he endured, which always caused him to turn around and leave. Many people heard about the mine that Lemon and Blackjack found, yet every expedition to locate it came back empty-handed or insane. The lost Lemon mine remains unlocated to this day. Some question if the mine ever even existed, or if Lemon had simply gone insane and imagined it. Either way, if you find yourself longing to climb some mountains, consider heading over to the Rockies. Who knows, you may even find some gold. Number 5. The Black Flash of Provincetown. In 1939, a group of children returned home, terrified, claiming to have seen a creature leaping after them from the sand dunes. The parents took this as a case of overactive imaginations, but little did they know, the creature the children saw would begin to strike fear into the heart of their small town. Reports of this creature began pouring in, people claiming to see it standing and watching them. It chased after them, laughing as people screamed, fearing for their lives. The creature was given many names: the Devil of the Dunes, the Provincetown Phantom, but the name that stuck was the Black Flash, as it highlighted how impossibly fast the creature was capable of moving. The Black Flash hasn't caused any physical damage to the citizens of the town. The creature's only goal seemed to be terrifying the residents. People theorized as to what the Black Flash could be: a pranking student, a reincarnation of a similar monster, or just a collective town joke that they all agreed on. The police claimed that they had located the perpetrators behind the Black Flash, but decided to keep the identity a secret. The creature did indeed disappear, showing that there may have been some truth to the police catching the perpetrators, but many questions still lingered in the residents' minds. How could the creature move so fast? And why was the police so against sharing the perpetrator?
Coming in at number 5, we have the narwhal tusk. If any of you have ever seen the movie Elf, then you're familiar with the cute narwhal in the beginning of the movie, and that movie really brought narwhals to the public's attention and making this sea creature more popular than ever before. But so much about this creature is a mystery. In 1577, the English explorer Martin Frobisher led an expedition of 150 men to the northern Canada in search of gold, but they had come across something they had never intended, and that was the sea unicorn. The myth of the unicorn goes back centuries, and the business of unicorn horn trade was sustained through the Middle Ages and Renaissance by Vikings who killed the so-called sea unicorns, cut off their horns and sold them for an astronomical price. As European naturalists became more familiar with the world's animal, the myth of the unicorn faded, but mystery of the sea unicorn continued. Frobisher's discovery was actually what we know today as the narwhal, but the horn itself continues to be speculated by many. But the horn is apparently not a horn at all, but is a tooth. The relatives of narwhals include species like the beluga whales, orcas and dolphins, but the mystery remains of how did this massive freakish tooth evolve in this one specific species after its ancestors branched off from whales with ordinary teeth. Many scientists and researchers debate about what this tooth is used for, and some suggest it's an acoustic probe, a rudder, an ice picker, or a spear for battling predators. These creatures don't make it easy for researchers to see them use their tusk for anything at all, so it makes many people continue to question it. Many have come up with many different theories about this so-called horn and what they use it for and why they have it. It has created a huge debate between researchers and scientists to this day, but no definite answer has come out to this day. In at number 4, we have the submarine disappearances in 1968. This is one giant mysterious situation, which is the disappearance of 4 submarines from 4 different countries in 1968. The USS Scorpion, a Soviet submarine K-129, a French submarine Minerve, and the INS Dakar went inexplicably missing over just a 5-month period, and the last 2 disappearing only 4 days apart. The exact causes of these sinkings remain unknown and remain a mystery over 50 years later. The INS Dakar was scheduled to arrive in Israel on January 29, 1968. When it didn't return, searchers went out to find it, but after a while there was no sign of the missing submarine. So the search ended on February 4th, and the 69-man crew was officially declared dead in 1981. The cause of the sinking was never determined, and theories say that that either a mechanical or human error caused a catastrophic accident, or that the submarine snorkel was damaged after hitting another ship causing it to flood. The Minerve was on the training operation in the Mediterranean on January 27, 1968, and when they were on their way home, the men were caught in a bad storm. When it was 30 miles away from the port, the Minerve made contact with the men on land and said it would port in about an hour, but an hour came and went, and the submarine had never returned. A frantic search was conducted with 20 vessels and aircrafts trying to locate the Minerve, but it was eventually called off on February 2nd when they found nothing. The K-129 with a crew of 98 descended on March 8, 1968, and almost 2 weeks into patrol on the North Pacific, the K-129 failed to send a scheduled radio message. The Soviets soon began a frantic search, and after 2 months of no sign of the submarine, they gave up their search. The cause of the ship sinking remains unknown and will likely never be known. Almost 3 months after the K-129, the USS Scorpion, a nuclear-powered attack submarine with a crew of 99 men, went missing in the Atlantic while on its way back from a patrol in the Mediterranean. It was sent out on February 15, 1968, and toward the end of its patrol, it radioed that it was expected to return on May 27th. But as you can guess, the USS Scorpion would never return. Like the others, many searched for the lost ship, but on June 5th, the Scorpion and its crew were declared presumed lost. Over the years, there have been multiple searches for these submarines, but only parts have been recovered, and it's considered one of the biggest mysteries that happened in the sea. No one knows why so many went missing in such a short amount of time, how exactly they went missing for so long, and what exactly made these vessels disappear. And this is a mystery we may never get the answer to.
In third place, we have the incident at Dyatlov Pass. On the first night of February 1959, 9 ski hikers had set up camp on a slope in the Russian mountains, enjoyed dinner, and prepared for sleep. But something went catastrophically wrong because the group never returned to civilization. On February 26th, searchers found the hikers' abandoned tent, which had been ripped open from the inside. Surrounding the area were footprints left by the group, some wearing socks, some wearing a single shoe, some barefoot, all of which continued to the edge of a nearby wood, which is where the first 2 bodies were found, shoeless and wearing only underwear. The scene bore marks of death by hypothermia, but as medical examiners inventoried the bodies, as well as the other 7 that were discovered over the months that followed, hypothermia was no longer making sense. As a matter of fact, the evidence made no sense at all. One body had evidence of a blunt force trauma, another had third-degree burns, one had been vomiting a red liquid that should still be in their veins, yet another one was missing a tongue, and some of their clothing was found to be radioactive. Alrighty, this is where I would just call it a day and condemn the entire freaking area. That's one too many weird variations to make sense in my brain. Also, anything radioactive? Burn it. Burn it all. Theories about what happened include KGB interference, drug overdose, UFO presence, gravity anomalies, and Yeti? The most recent theory involves a terrifying but real phenomenon called infrasound, in which the wind interacts with the topography to create a barely audible hum that can induce powerful feelings of nausea, panic, dread, chills, nervousness, raised heartbeat rate, and breathing difficulties. Add that to my list of why I never want to go hiking. Granted, I didn't really want to go hiking in the first place. In second place, we have the Water House. In June of 2014, Maria and Derek Broaddus and their 3 spawn were getting ready to move into their new home, 657 Boulevard in Westfield, New Jersey. They claimed the 6-bedroom house was their dream home, and it just so happened to be located a couple of blocks away from Maria's childhood home in one of the top 30th safest cities in the United States. Sounds a little too good to be true if I'm adding my 2 cents to this. 3 days after closing the sale, before the Broaddus family had even begun to move in, a letter arrived in their new mailbox. The letter was addressed to the new owner, in big clunky handwriting, and read as follows. Dearest new neighbor at 657 Boulevard, allow me to welcome you to the neighborhood. How did you end up here? Did 657 Boulevard call to you with its force within? 657 Boulevard has been the subject of my family for decades now, and as it approaches its 110th birthday, I have been put in charge of watching and waiting for its second coming. My grandfather watched the house in the 1920s, and my father watched in the 1960s. It is now my time. Who am I? There are hundreds and hundreds of cars that drive by 657 Boulevard each day. Maybe I am in one. Look at all the windows you can see from 657 Boulevard. Maybe I'm in one. Look out any of the many windows in 657 Boulevard and at all the people who stroll by each day. Maybe I am one. Yeah, okay. The letter also mentioned specifics about the Broaddus family, talking about the offspring and that the unknown author had seen them, stating that, so far I think there are 3 that I have counted. Do you need to fill the house with the young I requested? Better for me. Was your old house too small for the growing family? Or was agreed to bring me yours? Once I know their names, I will call them and draw them to me. Yeah, okay. Pardon the narrator voice, I just like to differentiate. At the bottom of the letter, the author used a cursive font to sign The Watcher. Okay, this is where I wish I had a red flag to start waving around, so just imagine it in my hand. Okie dokie? After receiving the letter, the Broaddus family reached out to the previous family who had sold them the house, John and Andrea Woods. They stated that during the 23 years of living at 657 Boulevard, they had never received a letter like that except once, a few days before they were getting ready to move out of the house. The Woods family also stated they had never felt watched in the 2 decades they had lived at the house, and in fact, rarely felt the need to lock their door at night. While they thought the note they received was odd, they threw it away without much concern. Red flag notice again. That's something people should know about. Thankfully, the 2 families went to the police with the letters, and an investigation was opened. The police warned the families not to tell anyone about the letters, including their neighbors who were all suspects. 2 weeks later, even though the Broaddus family still hadn't moved in, they received a second letter with even more chilling specifics about the family, including the offspring's birth order and nicknames. The Watcher also asked if the Wards would sleep in the attic, or would the entire family sleep on the 2nd floor. Who has bedrooms facing the street? I will know as soon as you move in. It will help me to know who is in which bedroom. Then I can plan better. This is where I would have done everything in my power to avoid ever going near that place and moving across the country. Nope, 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 nope. Part of me, stalking and harassment are issues that really get under my skin. Several weeks later, when the Broaddus family had put their plans on hold to move in, a 3rd letter arrived saying, "Where have you gone to? 657 Boulevard is missing you." Okay, by the end of 2014, the case had stalled completely. There was no digital trail, and the mental effects were taking a toll on the Broaddus family. No kidding! That kind of watching over your shoulder can take a mental toll like you wouldn't believe unless you've gone through it yourself. There were no fingerprints and no way to place somebody at the scene of the crime. Only 6 months after they received the letters, they decided to sell the home. Good on them for doing so. This place has since been sold and is currently off the market, while the Watcher's identity still remains a mystery. In first place, we have a case of human combustion. What can I say? I thought I'd end today on a fiery note. On July 2nd of 1951, in St. Petersburg, Florida, Mary Reeser was visited by her son, Dr. Richard Reeser, in her apartment and mentioned during their conversation that she had taken 2 mild sedatives and planned to take 2 more before bed. Hey, whatever helps you sleep. Later that night, she would fall asleep in an upholstered chair for the last time, as she would become the victim of an apparent house fire. The next morning, Mary's landlord reported smelling smoke around 5 a.m. But it wasn't until 8 a.m. when she went to go deliver a telegraph to Mary that she would smell the smoke again. She discovered soot in the hallway, and the doorknob leading to Mary's apartment was too hot to grab, so she enlisted the help of nearby house painters to get into the apartment. What they found inside said apartment was truly horrifying. Mary's skull was reportedly shrunk to the size of a cup, and parts of her spine also remained. Her left foot was found still in its black satin slipper with the skin unburned, but the rest of her remains had been completely cremated. What makes this case even more odd, because that wasn't odd enough, was the environment of her surroundings. Fun science fact for everyone: in order for a body to be cremated, the body must burn at 3,000 degrees Fahrenheit for 3 to 4 hours. But somehow the surrounding area of Mary's chair and the rest of her apartment were relatively unaffected. The walls had no burn marks and showed no signs of scorching or burned paint. Light switches were melted, but outlets were still completely functional. Candlesticks had melted, but their wicks stood upright. And a stack of newspapers close to the chair was undamaged. You know, the easily flammable thing. Mary's neighbors were also unaware of the fire. Look, I can write off a list of things that wouldn't faze me from a neighbor at this point in my life, but the smell of smoke is definitely something I would be freaking out about. The FBI eventually came up with some form of cover-up, but I'm not gonna waste anyone's time with that since it doesn't make any sense.
Number 5. The Pyramids and the Sphinx. Famed for giving out riddles to passers-by and would-be kings and keeping even more secrets for itself, the Sphinx and the Great Pyramids of Giza aren't just one of the best tourist destinations in the world, they're a source of never-ending speculation. Were they crafted by aliens? Are there hidden secrets lying within the Sphinx that we don't know about? Almost certainly. Let's dissect them a bit. So the Sphinx, if you haven't heard of it, this is your first time hearing about it. It's one of the 7 wonders of the world or something, but this might be the first time. It's a massive limestone statue with a lion's body, and let's be real, it's a nice one at that. And the head of a human. Was it always a human's face? There's some speculation and discussion about that. Some researchers have proposed that originally the Sphinx was a monument to the jackal god Anubis, and that his face was refitted at some point in the image of Amenhotep II, a pharaoh from around that era. Now the purpose and origin remains a point of contention to Egyptologists. What was the Sphinx built for? Is it a tomb? A monument? Just something to take photos of? Some people even speculated that the Sphinx is older than Egypt even. A tomb? A A monument? Just something to do? Researchers too have speculated that perhaps the Sphinx is older than Egypt even. Erosion pattern on the Sphinx's body appear consistent with water erosion, rather than wind erosion, raising all sorts of questions about the climate and geological history. Did Egypt used to be like a lot wetter? And that's just what puzzles people on the outside. The inside of the thing is a whole other can of worms. Some propose that there are unexplored passages or secret chambers containing wondrous treasures, ancient texts, sacred artifacts. I think the Master Sword might even be in there. Some people think there's proof of extraterrestrial life. It's a very widespread conspiracy theory that aliens were involved in the Sphinx and the pyramids and are very closely tied to ancient Egyptian culture. Some limited excavations around the Sphinx have been carried out, but because of the delicate nature of the monument, further digging is a bit challenging. You don't want to be the guy who ruined one of the 7 wonders of the world. They're gonna make fun of you forever if that happens. We could do a whole video on the mysteries behind the Sphinx, and I sincerely hope we do, because we are just scratching the surface of strange stuff going on there. But if you're looking for way more strange stuff, then you already know we have that in spades. We've got just about everything freaky you can think of. We've done a video or 2 on it. So hit subscribe. Please hit that little bell as well so you make sure to get our videos up to date. Don't miss a single scream, but do that at the end of this video because I got 4 more unsolved mysteries for you coming up right now. Number 4, the Voynich manuscript. The manuscript is one of my personal favorite unsolved mysteries out there just for how sheer little we know about it. We have nothing. It's kind of a choose your own adventure for mysteries. Is it aliens? Demons? A really convoluted historical prank? If you don't know, the Voynich manuscript is a strange document written in a handwritten text filled with bizarre illustrations. No one's been able to make sense of it, primarily because it's written in a language that has never been seen elsewhere in human history. It was named after Wilfrid Voynich, the Polish antiquarian who purchased it in 1912, although its ownership has passed through many hands. So what was it written for, and by who? These are the questions we've been asking, and we're probably going to keep asking over and over. The manuscript is about 240 pages, containing illustrations of plants, astronomical diagrams, humanoid figures, and other strange objects. Despite countless attempts by cryptographers, no one's been able to crack the code just yet. Some speculation has been made that it could be a biology textbook in an encoded language. Some people think it could be the scrawlings of a brilliant alchemist, magic and spell casting we couldn't possibly hope to understand. Some say it's from a forgotten civilization, while others have said maybe it's all just a load of nonsense and is just made by someone who had too much time on their hands and a vengeance against historians who wanted to prank them for centuries. The book is thought to have come from anywhere between the 15th century and the 17th century. We don't even know when this thing was written. Like I said, we know next to nothing about it. Now, if you're feeling clever and inspired, you can find a PDF of the Voynich manuscript as a free download pretty easily. Who knows? You might be the one to finally crack this case. But hey, don't be frustrated if you end up falling down a conspiracy rabbit hole many before you have tried. I looked through a few of these pages and it took me 30 seconds before I was looking like Charlie from Always Sunny at the conspiracy wall, all that red tape and stuff.
Alrighty. Who's heard of Odysseus before? If not, it is Cliff's Notes time, everybody. Time to throw it back to the Greek and Roman history elective I regretted taking during my first year of university. It was hard, first thing in the morning, and overall just kinda dry. But I made a really good friend out of the struggle of keeping each other awake, so there's that. In Greek and Roman mythology, Odysseus, also known by the Latin variant Ulysses, is a legendary king of Ithaca and the hero of Homer's epic poem, The Odyssey. We all know it. Odysseus plays a key role in Homer's Iliad as well, and other works in that same epic cycle. The works of Homer provide some of the earliest examples of ghost stories, ergo fitting the ancient theme of today. I almost dressed up retro, but at the same time I didn't want to wear a corset today. Well, in the underworld where Odysseus had encountered his companion Elpenor, he also came across the spirit of his mother, Anticlea. Unaware she had passed while he had been on campaign, Odysseus tried to embrace her, but was unable to, which, oof, that is rough. In Homer's description of the dead, it appears that spirits could hear the living and receive their offerings. However, they were only able to actually interact with the living after drinking human redness, which Odysseus provided. How generous. His mission upon entering the underworld had been to consult the ghost of the seer, Tiresias. While there, Odysseus also encounters spirits of brides, unmarried men, virginal girls, men killed in battle who still wear their red-soaked armor, etc., etc. Pardonnez-moi, this is starting to sound like it influenced early vampire lore. Only gaining abilities after consuming the life essence of humans? I'm down to give that a try. I feel like I spill enough of my own life source whenever I perform certain sideshow acts that I could probably bottle up enough, go to a cemetery, ingest it, and see what happens. Yes, I'm a bit of a weirdo if that wasn't obvious enough, and part vampire. Long story. But seriously, the variety of spirits just hanging out is wild. I'd like like to give that a try someday. It'd be fun. To continue on with this trend of ancient way backness, how about next up we visit an Athens haunted house? In a theme park setting, I'm trying to figure out what that would look like. Probably lots of statues, a really wonky family, somebody droning on and on and on about their beliefs, but let me know in the comments what you think you could add to it. Roman lawyer and busy letter writer Pliny the Younger told a story of a chain-rattling ghost in Athens in perhaps the most famous haunted house of the ancient world. Pliny related the spooky yarn in a letter to his friend Licinia Sura. In the letter, Pliny said that the large house was haunted by the sound of clanking chains at night. People inside could hear the chains getting louder and louder as I'm moving closer to them. Now I can see where the Ebenezer Scrooge ghosts got their inspiration, and so forth and so on, because ghosts holding chains is a very well-known trope nowadays. The spirit making the demonic noise turned out to be a disheveled old man with a long scraggly beard and hair. The phantom pensioner eventually forced one set of owners to sell up until a philosopher named Athenodorus bought the house at a very low price. In today's economy, I know I would happily buy a house with a ghostie if I could afford the price. Like, that isn't even a downside. I'm sure we could be friends. So Athenodorus, hearing about the resident ghost, decided to sit and wait for it one night. He moved his bed into the main area of the house, near the front door, and sent his servants home. He's like, we're gonna do this on my own, let's see what happens. While reading in the middle of the night, Athenodorus started to hear the dreaded ghost. The sound of the chains grew louder and louder. When he turned around, he saw the specter of the chain-rattling man. Now, he was amazed to see the spirit beckon him outside into the courtyard. The curious philosopher followed him out and saw the apparition vanish. The next day, he had the spot where the ghost disappeared dug up. The skeleton of a man, bound in chains and with signs of violent death, was found beneath the surface. The remains were given a proper funeral and the haunting ceased forever. Well, there you have it, folks. If you help a spirit pass on, or if you leave their place of burial in peace without disturbing them, unless they ask you to do so, you're good. Don't mess with Ouija boards, don't tempt fate, you can exist in peace. Simple stuff. And finally today we have the ghost of Nero. He was part of the first imperial dynasty of Rome, consisting of the first 5 emperors. Other famous names include Caligula, Tiberius, you know the rest. While Augustus is praised for being an accomplished ruler, folks like Caligula and Nero were infamous for their cruelty and excesses. I still can't believe that to this day people are still named after Nero. Like, why would you want to give your offspring such a cursed name? My name has been sadly bastardized by Amazon in my lifetime, so whenever I personally learn that somebody born after the boom of Amazon Alexa was given the name, I severely judge the parents. Like, why the bleep would you want to set up your spawn for a lifetime of ridicule? Like, it's beyond me. Don't get me wrong, I love my name, but not the Amazon jokes that come with it. Sorry, I know. Back on topic I go. Among the many dynasties that ruled over this sprawling empire, the Julio-Claudian dynasty stands out as one of the most unsettling for sure. This dynasty, which spanned from 27 BC to 68 AD, was a roller coaster ride of power, intrigue, and brutality. The Romans were keen to believe that their most oppressive rulers would continue to terrorize them after their deaths. Pliny the Younger, we all remember him, recorded a story of how Nero's biographer, Gaius Fannius, was interrupted in his work by his own subject. So one dark, eerie night, Fannius was busy penning the next installment of his life of Nero, when Nero himself sat down and started reading aloud from the previous chapters. Then Nero vanished, scaring Fannius half to death. The author knew that, oh boy, this is a sign, the end of my life, and he was right. Fannius died soon after, before he could even finish the biography.
Coming in our number 5 spot, NASA hack. Back in 2002, a man named Gary McKinnon was doing some research on the existence of aliens. You know, as one does. But McKinnon took things a little too far when he decided to hack into NASA to try to look up the information that they had on this subject. Because, as we all know, there's so many theories that NASA knows aliens exist, but they're trying to convince people that that's not the case. Yeah, so many conspiracy theories. When trying to get into the computer, McKinnon found a remote desktop connection that had no password protecting it. So obviously he did a little digging. There he found an image of some sort of flying aircraft, but it didn't look like any aircraft he had ever seen before. When the NASA employees noticed what he saw, his access was cut off. So yeah, pretty obvious that NASA didn't want whatever he saw to be seen by the public. Authorities apparently wanted to throw him in jail, claiming that he destroyed government computers and caused a lot of damage. But apparently these accusations were never proven and McKinnon was allowed to go free. And at number 4, Web Driver Torso. This YouTube page hit the internet in September of 2013. On this account, a video was uploaded every minute of every day, and they would last exactly 11 seconds each. Then towards the end, there were a few that lasted 25 minutes. The videos would be filled with red and blue rectangles and a strange beeping sound. Originally, people had no clue what these videos meant or why so many of them were being posted. One conspiracy theorist linked them to number stations, used during the Cold War for communicating with spies. But then in 2014, Google revealed that this was actually a quality test account. But many people aren't buying this. For one thing, it took them a whole year to say this. Yeah, I'm not so sure about that one. Also, many people are saying that these videos must serve a darker purpose.
Number 3. Frederick Valentich. Our next mysterious case is Frederick Valentich, an Australian pilot, a well-trained aerial ace. He had 150 hours of manned flight experience and was permitted to fly alone, provided it was in good weather conditions. He also had a love of extraterrestrial life, a deep desire to find that unknown above. Well, Valentich might have got his wish. Tragically, it might have cost him his life. The year was 1978. Frederick Valentich was performing a 125 nautical mile training flight flying to a small landmass called Kings Island. While at 4,500 feet in the air, Valentich thought he had seen something with him. The Melbourne Flight Service insisted that there wasn't anything in the air with him, but Frederick radioed back and said that there was something on his tail. He claimed that he saw something glowing with 4 repeating bright lights and was rushing past him, and he described it as shiny, metallic, and chrome and looking like a small manned craft. Now, unsure what was happening, Valentich on radio to ground control told them that he was experiencing engine troubles inexplicably. Could this strange flying object be the source of these unexpected problems? Valentich complained out about whatever was following him to the Melbourne Flight Service, saying, "It's hovering and it's not an aircraft." Those would be the last words anyone ever heard from Frederick. Minutes after that last transmission, he went silent and the plane, or the mysterious craft, was never found. An intense search revealed nothing. No sign of the man. The only lead was a local farmer alleging that the day Frederick disappeared, he saw what looked like a civilian aircraft seemingly fused with what looked like a saucer. The farmer told authorities he was worried about being dismissed as a crackpot, so he didn't tell anyone what he saw that day. What do you think? Should he have checked his eyes better? Or was he perhaps the last person to see the remnant of Frederick Valentich before he was carried off into who knows what? Number 2. Michael Rockefeller. When Michael Rockefeller was born, he was born with a silver spoon to a lineage of millionaires in the late 1930s. His great-grandfather, one John Rockefeller, is one of the richest men to have ever lived. The Rockefellers had hoped that Michael would follow them in the family business. Michael, however, had other ideas and wanted to use his millions of dollars to goof off and take it easy, which is what most of us would, I think. Michael had wanderlust in his heart and a deep interest in anthropology, specifically focused on Nigerian, Mayan, and Aztec cultures. Michael's father sat on a board of a museum in New York where Michael would discover this passion, hoping to one day open a collection of indigenous art in New York. After some discussions with the Dutch Museum of Ethnology, terrible name, Michael had decided he would set out to the massive island off the coast of Australia, at the time known as Dutch New Guinea. In 1961, he set off to collect the art of the Asmat people who lived there. It would be a one-way trip. The Asmat people that he was going to study were very disconnected from the rest of the world. They had previously seen Dutch colonizers, but otherwise they weren't getting a ton of visitors. The Asmat believed that the land beyond their island was inhabited by spirits, and they saw the Euros and the Americans as supernatural beings that had come over from across the sea. Michael and his team were allowed to study the people, but were banned from purchasing or taking anything, which held a great deal of significance to the Asmat. Nonetheless, Michael was thrilled with everything he'd been finding and could not wait to open his exhibit. In November 1961, Michael was on a boat accompanied by other anthropologists when a sudden squall threw the boat off its course. 12 miles away from the shore, but Michael insisted he could swim for it, and he was never seen again. The Rockefellers would spend the next few months spending a small fortune trying to find Michael, but gave up after never uncovering anything. The case went cold for years, but officers believed that Michael hadn't been lost to the water, but was rather offered as part of a sacrifice. His head chopped off, his flesh eaten, his bones made into weaponry, you know. Fun stuff. An investigator, one Carl Hoffman, uncovered this while filming the Asmat people. He saw a group of men acting out a scene, miming the act of, removing someone's head from the rest of their neck and attacking them with spears. Now, we can't really find this footage, but through interpretation and translation was a stern warning to the other villagers that Hoffman reported. Pop your ears open and take a listen. Don't you tell this story to any other man. I hope you remember it, and you must keep this for us. I hope this is for you and you only. Don't talk to anyone, to other people, or another village. If people question you, don't answer. Don't talk to them because the story is only for you. If you tell it to them, you'll die. Or any other village because the story is only for us. I probably shouldn't have shared it just then, now. Maybe just scrub that. Number 1, Lars Mittank. Lars Mittank is a young German man who became infamous in 2014 when his disappearance captured the attention of the world. Last seen on airport security footage, he's been called the most famous missing person on YouTube. Wow, isn't that a lovely title? I'd put that right on my resume. In July 2014, Mitank was vacationing in Varna, Bulgaria, I've heard lovely things, with a group of friends. Apparently things were pretty unremarkable until an argument about football at a bar turned into a brawl. You see, Mitank was a Bremen man and he was getting into an argument with some nasty Bayern fans. I actually don't know nothing about German football. Clear that up in the comments. Mitank would suffer a ruptured eardrum and was told to stay on the ground, for flying could damage his ears even further. So Lars decided to stay in Varna just a little bit longer while the rest of the party would return back to Berlin. Now here's where things take a turn for the strange. CCTV footage from the airport shows Lars behaving strangely, for lack of a better word. Dropping his luggage, running in a sprint, hopping a fence, the kind of things you would do if you were running away from somebody. His final texts warned his mother to cancel his credit cards as he believed he was being pursued. This footage was the last time he was ever seen, as he vanished without a trace shortly thereafter. Both German and Bulgarian authorities launched investigations, but nobody found anything. Hospital records turned up nothing, and outside of a few disconnected sightings of alleged hitchhikers which could have matched descriptions, nothing was ever outright confirmed. So what happened? What happened? There are theories. Some speculate perhaps that the medication he was prescribed was causing a psychological breakdown, combined with the paranoia of being attacked and reeling from the attack earlier in the week. The doctor who prescribed that medication, though, noted he never even filed the prescription, and the doctor was perplexed and concerned with the seemingly causeless change of behavior.
In 5th place, we have the sunken kingdom of Cantor Guelod. I swear I do look up pronunciations for words, I really do. Anywho, welcome to a place that has a lot of things in common with the legendary Atlantis. Cardigan Bay is home to some outstanding coastal trails overlooking the bay, with many people saying that they can see glimmers of buildings underneath the water. And that has led to the story of the Sunken Kingdom, a city that was once thriving that had been lost to the waves due to the carelessness of a lockkeeper called Scythonen. People still claim that you can see the buildings and hear the bells ringing out to this day. So it was originally a fertile and prosperous kingdom, with no fewer than 16 heavily populated cities, and was said to occupy a lush, fertile area that laid on a stretch of land running between Ramsay Island and Bardsey Island, which is now Cardigan Bay, West Wales. But it was like low-lying. A number of steep embankments and gates have been built to protect the land from flooding. There was a system of gates to allow water to enter the kingdom in order to irrigate the agricultural pastures. The kingdom was ruled by Gwyddno Garahir, and he had made his friend Scythonen guardian of the sea defenses, a role that included making sure the gates were shut every night. However, after a night of revelry at the king's palace, Scythonen stumbled drunkenly into bed without checking that the gates were closed, and unfortunately, it happened to be a stormy night that night, and the high spring tides broke through the defenses, quickly flooding the entire area and forcing its people to escape to the hills. So there is physical evidence that inhabited land did disappear under the waves during the period that the tale is set, as well as the stumps of an ancient sunken forest that can be seen at very low tide at Yenislas. Archaeologists have also found a timber walkway dated between 3,000 to 4,000 years ago, which was probably built so locals could continue to live in an increasingly waterlogged environment. In 1770, a Welsh scholar by the name of William Owen Pugh reported seeing sunken human habitations about 4 miles off the Ceredigion coast, between the rivers Ystwyth and Teifi. Human and animal footprints have also been found preserved in the hardened top layer of peat, along with burnt stones that came from ancient hearths. In 4th place, we have the Berwyn Mountains UFO, known as the Roswell event, after similarities with the infamous Roswell extraterrestrial event in the US. The cause of this 1974 phenomenon is still very much up for debate, something I like to hear. So on the evening of the 23rd of January in 1974, residents of the Berwyn Mountains area in northern Wales reported a loud noise and a bright light in the sky. A Ministry of Defense investigation found that there were about 5 other reports of UFOs seen over the UK at 10 p.m. that same night, which is when this incident happened. 3 sightings were in the home counties, 1 in Lincolnshire and another in Sussex. Witnesses reported seeing a bright light in the northwest which seemed to fall towards the horizon. An expert who undertook independent research into the Berwyn Mountains incident for the British Astronomical Society reported that a fireball was visible over most of the UK that night. Now, sightings were received from Somerset, Norfolk, Manchester, and Edinburgh, which is noted. The fireball descended from about 120 kilometers in the sky to about 35 kilometers before disintegrating over Manchester. UFO experts claimed that a UFO crashed and the British government covered up the military's recovery of a crashed spaceship. Witnesses claimed to see a bright ball of yellow over top before feeling a huge tremor underfoot. Now, many have tried to make sense of it all, and the list of theories is as long as my arm. And still, No one really knows what happened, not even those who live in the Berwyn Mountains.
Next up at number 3, the mystery of Oak Island. And whilst many of you will know this particular entry, there's no denying the fact that the eternal mystery that is Oak Island is worth mentioning every single damn time, and its inception is an event that has long evaded the unscrupulous eye of history. You know the story, right? In Nova Scotia, just off the coast of eastern Canada, lies a small island that has allegedly been the site of our civilization's greatest of treasures, although no one has ever been able to locate the exact point of where that treasure lies, causing countless individuals to fall into a wild obsession with unearthing its eternal mystery. In fact, the cause of Oak Island's mystery is down to the fact people have found treasure there, many of which have been carbon dated to several hundred years old, and the story of the Money Pit, a mysterious shaft that has been excavated countless times throughout history, which actually exists with actual structural records, has forced dozens of businesses to go bankrupt trying to solve its enigma. So here we are with our mystery. Who the hell built this place? Now, there are hundreds of theories as to who would have constructed such an intricate place to conceal their treasure, the most popular being Captain William Kidd, the pirate that sailed to North America in the late 1600s, burying his plunder there so no one else could find it. Another theory states that the pit was constructed to house none other than Mary Antoinette's jewels, who after the Parisian uprising at the Palace of Versailles gave her treasures to a lady-in-waiting, who then fled France and ended up in Nova Scotia, where using her royal connections contracted the French Navy to construct the Oak Island pit, making sure that the incredibly rare jewels of her queen would never be discovered. And strangely enough, there has actually been credible evidence for this theory recently in 2017, when a 500-year-old brooch was discovered containing a huge garnet similar to that of which Mary Antoinette was reported to often wear. I mean, we could talk about all of these theories for an entire video, but as so far as unsolved events in history go, this one remains to be exactly that. Swinging in at number 2, the Yonauni Monument. Okay, where do we even begin with this one? Because if you've seen any of our ancient mystery series, then this one definitely deserves its place amongst their ilk. But the event that we're possibly alluding to in the case of the Yonauni Monument may be a geological enigma that predates known civilization itself, involving an entire continent submerging deep beneath the ocean. Yeah, and whilst that may sound like a massive leap, let's just take a look at the strange properties of the Yonauni Monument before we jump to any kind of conclusions. Off the coast of Japan, submerged beneath the southernmost Ryukyu Islands, lie a formation of potentially man-made monoliths, which has led to decades of debate as to the true nature of this strange geological formation. The monument itself consists of very fine sandstone and mudstone, with its main feature being a rectangular formation measuring about 90 feet tall and consisting of several other strange formations that seemingly don't make sense as to how they have been naturally formed. Now, despite this massive debate between the Yonauni Monument being natural or man-made, perhaps the most mind-blowing theory comes from the renowned geologist Robert Schoch of Boston University, who states that the Yonauni Monument is indeed most likely a natural formation, possibly used and modified by humans in the past before seemingly sliding away to the murky depths of the ocean during a geological event that occurred in ancient history. On the flip side, the geologist that discovered the monument, Masaaki Kimura, claimed that the structure was undoubtedly artificial, created by an ancient civilization at least 10,000 years ago, accurately carved and created before sliding into the ocean following unknown tectonic activity. Kimura also goes on to say that not only that, but he can also identify a nearby pyramid, castles, entire roads, other monuments, an entire stadium at the bottom of the ocean. Yeah, this one is quite something. What do you guys think? Let me know. And finally, coming in at our number 1 spot, the creation of Baalbek. Because, holy moly, if this one isn't one of the most mysterious unsolved events in history, I'm not entirely sure what is. Who the hell built Baalbek in Lebanon, the most mysterious ruins of the entire Roman Empire, a monumental, supposedly 2,000-year-old temple to the god Jupiter that sits atop 3 separate 1,000-ton stone blocks? To put it into perspective, the monoliths at Stonehenge weigh about 1/40th of that. Yeah, you heard that correctly. 1,000-ton stone blocks. And despite being the diligent record keepers that they were, there is no record of who ordered this temple to be built, how these monolithic stones were cut, why they were cut, or how they even came to be, and how the temple itself came to be abandoned, because for the most part, whoever built Baalbek just up and left. Now, there are many mythological and cultural legends as to the origins of Baalbek. Some say that Cain built it to hide away from the wrath of God. Others say that giants built it at the command of Nimrod, which would eventually become the Tower of Babel. In fact, in the Epic of Gilgamesh, some claim that the intergalactic landing pad alluded to in its tale was in itself Baalbek, a site constructed purely for the reception of ancient astronauts. In fact, though, the actual mystery of Baalbek resides more within its geographical location. What was the point in cutting such enormous rocks out in the middle of nowhere? Why was this temple even built where it was? And why would the Romans go to such great lengths to create a structure that wasn't efficient in location instead of next to a major city or a port? The Romans weren't exactly known for doing things without efficiency and purpose. That's what made them so successful, after all. In fact, Baalbek seems so out of character to have been built by the Romans that many scholars completely eschew any historical engineering correlation with them and simply state that the Romans never built Baalbek but discovered it and then added their iconic pillars to Jupiter and repurposed the ruins as their own kind of temple. Yeah, I'm stumped, guys. The construction of Baalbek, who made it, when they did, how they did it, and why they did it remains to be one of the most mysterious events in history.
Number 5. The Dark Watchers. California is oft considered one of the most beautiful states. It's got gorgeous mountains, lush beaches, sunny days. It's practically a paradise. But behind sun-streaked sands at the peaks of the Santa Lucia Mountains lies a dark secret. A mysterious group of shadowy beings watching over the people below. The locals call them Los Vigilantes Oscuros. Los Vigilantes Oscuros, or the Dark Watchers, were first reported during the 18th century by Spanish settlers who arrived there. The stories would describe these tall, featureless specters that would appear for a moment, serving as a warning before someone's imminent disappearance. It was the last thing you'd ever see. Now, these creatures towered over mortals and looked human enough, but were anything but. They stood 10 to 12 feet tall and were said to be draped in cloaks or capes and wore large brimmed hats like that of a witch. Folklore and oral stories describe these creatures as sternly observing, watching over on high, and seemingly only pursuing those who disturb them. But it is said that those who approach these figures vanish into oblivion, never seen again, not even leaving behind a footprint. So what are they? With hundreds of years worth of reports and sightings, surely someone must have some guess as to what scary shadow people are watching you in the mountains. Now, the prevailing and admittedly kind of dull theory is that the Dark Watchers are a symptom of pareidolia, a very common psychological phenomenon in which the human brain attempts to seek out patterns that it recognizes in something weird. It's why our brain often fills in strange details in the sky. If we see something up there, we can see a flying saucer kind of because we want it to be a flying saucer, you know? Our brain fills in the details we think we see. Encounters of Dark Watchers could just be the shadows of swaying trees or creatures darting about in the night and tired eyes mistaking it for something else. But this video is about unsolved paranormal mysteries, and it's more likely this might be a paranormal phenomenon for which there is no comfortable scientific or reasonable explanation. These creatures through the veil exist in a way I just can't understand. So perhaps it's best for now that we follow their example, and you know what? We just watch. We just observe, we take nothing but photos, we leave footprints, I think that's how it goes. And we keep watching Top 5 Scary. The shadow people told me to say that. It's actually crazy. The shadow people also told me that their one wish is they want for you guys out there to like and comment and subscribe and hit that little bell to make sure you get all the videos that we put out. It's weird that they were so specific with their orders, but that's I'm just relaying what they told us. So keep on watching Top 5 Scary, but do all that subscribing business at the end of this video, because otherwise you're gonna miss the rest of the California mysteries I got for you. Number 4, the Ghost of Hollywood. The Hollywood sign is probably one of the most iconic landmarks on the West Coast. Instantly you see that and you know you're in La La Land. But did you know it might be haunted by the spirit of a Hollywood starlet who took her life years ago? Beneath the monument to Tinseltown's glitz and glamour lies a dark secret that perhaps would be better left buried. Peg Entwistle was a young actress and a Hollywood hopeful who had a dream, like many before her, to come to Hollywood and become a household name, making it big on the silver screen. She had a small career on Broadway and then traveled to California to make it in the pictures and landed a role in a picture 13 Women. Now, by the time the film had premiered to test audiences, her role was cut almost entirely down to 12 women, causing her to fall into a depression. The film released and was neither a commercial or critical hit. Despondent, Entwistle thought there was no hope for her. On September 16th, 1932, she left her home to climb the Hollywood sign and cast herself off of the H to the hiking trail below. Now, since then, hikers and visitors to Hollywood's famous landmark have reported strange occurrences around the tourist spot. Hikers claim they can smell strange perfume in the air, thought to be Peggy's favorite. Joggers sometimes claim they see an ethereal woman in 1930s with a sad expression walking down the trail. That could also just be Lana Del Rey though. One park ranger, John Arbogast, claims he sees her almost nightly whenever it's too foggy. Sees her sitting, brooding, forever trapped in the place she could never make her dreams happen. This does give me an idea though, maybe a little way to solve everybody's problems. Maybe somebody makes a movie about the ghost in the Hollywood sign, and then instead of blowing your budget on special effects, you ask her to play the ghost. She gets to star in a big movie. You get to make a movie about ghosts. She might pass on. Everybody wins. Win, 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 win. Just make sure if you make that movie, I produce that, okay? So keep me in the credits.
Next up, at number 3, the Golan structure. Alright guys, if Cat Shabib had you scratching your head, then the Golan structure is going to require some form of head scratching machinery. Let me introduce you to the Golan structure, also known as Rajum el-Hiri, an ancient megalithic monument that resides in the Israeli-occupied portion of Golan Heights, just off of the east coast of the Sea of Galilee. Made up of more than 42,000 basalt rocks arranged in concentric circles with a mound that is 15 foot tall at its centre, the Golan structure has often been referred to as the Stonehenge of the Levant. Why? Well, of course, because it dates back to at least the early Bronze Age, to between 3000 and 2700 BCE. So what is it? Who built it? What purpose did it serve? Yeah, that'll be a we don't have a freaking clue on pretty much all of those points. The outermost wall of this structure is 520 feet in diameter and 8 feet high, and since archaeological excavations have thus far yielded very few material remains, most Israeli archaeologists believe that the site was certainly not of a defensive position or a residential quarter, but most likely, as the vast majority of these enigmas are, it was a ritual center. And not only that, but a ritual center that is possibly linked to the cult of the dead. But on that note, there's even more of a mystery, because so far no human remains have ever been found at the site, only objects pointing to its function as some kind of tomb. And also, hold on to your hats guys, because this is where it gets weirder. At the centre of the Golan structure, the actual entrance to a tomb was discovered, one that during the June and December solstices, its axis is perfectly aligned with. Yeah. More questions, fewer answers. The thing is though, as its namesake as the Stonehenge of the Levant, no other structures of its kind have ever been discovered, which is even more of a head scratcher considering the fact that in ancient Britain, as well as in South America, structures like this are pretty common. Some believe that its purpose was to worship Tammuz and Ishtar, the ancient Mesopotamian fertility gods. Others suggest that it was used by the Dakmas of the Zoroastrians to lay out their dead and let the birds remove the flesh from their bones. Some say that it was a calendar or a site to observe the constellations for religious calculations. Maybe it was all of these things at some point in time, but as it remains, we may never know. Coming in at number 2, the Great Lakes Copper Mystery. Oh boy, here we go. If you're not already feeling perplexed at the mysteries of the ancient world, then I'm fairly certain that this one will knock your metaphorical socks off. In the wilds of Michigan's Isle Royale National Park, it remains a beautiful and remote location, but thousands of years ago, the island was home to a thriving mining industry. Yes, mining. The rich veins of copper that ripple through the site's bedrock certainly drew the attention of the early Native Americans, and the fact that they diligently used this ore to make tools and jewelry is evident still. But the actual extent of their operation remains a complete and utter mystery. Why? Well, because around 6,500 years ago, there is clear and startling evidence to suggest that roughly 500,000 tons of copper was mined from the land. 500,000 tons of copper, which simply put is a staggering amount. Now, the copper culture complex is an astounding feat of ancient civilization regardless, but here is where our mystery takes another turn. You know why? Because Michigan copper is some of the purest copper on the planet. Keep that thought in mind. And 500,000 tons of it, well frankly put, there should be more evidence to its use throughout the Midwest. Now I'm going to take a little bit of a leap here and I'm going to point us toward another ancient mystery, one that occurred off the coast of Turkey roughly around the 14th century BC. A shipwreck that was discovered just off the east shore of Uluburun, discovered by a sponge diver back in 1982. Now the Uluburun shipwreck is a bit of a mystery in and of itself, but it's with the content of its cargo that we're concerned with here. Within the hull of the shipwreck, over 10 tons of copper oxide ingots were discovered. Now oxide ingots, which are named so down to the fact that they are shaped with rectangular handholds on either side, were relatively common in the late Bronze Age period of the Mediterranean Sea. You know what is weird? Testing on these ingots later discovered that they were extraordinarily pure for others of its kind. In fact, more than 99.5% pure. The oxides themselves were brittle blister copper with voids and slag bits that only occur when multiple pourings were made outdoors over wood fires. There is only one type of ore of this purity, Michigan copper, the kind mined over 6,500 years ago in the copper culture complex of North America. Yeah, beats me guys. And finally coming in at number 1 spot, the Ness of Brodgar. And I absolutely adore this particular Neolithic mystery, and at the moment this is pretty much my direct inspiration for scholarly study of the ancient world. Now we've covered this area quite a few times on this channel, and if you'd like to find out more about places like Skara Brae, the ancient site discovered on the Orkney Isles of northern Scotland, then please check out our Scottish history list, and also, you know, do your own discovering, because Neolithic Orkney is absolutely amazing. But there's another place that is even more remarkable than Skara Brae, the Ness of Brodgar, perhaps one of the most important discoveries in archaeological record depicting just what the hell was going on during the Neolithic period of ancient Britain. Now back in 2003, in a site that occupies the central position with the Orkney archipelago that lies between the locks of Stenness and Harray, an imposing complex of monuments were discovered, a series of structures that seemingly were of pivotal importance to Neolithic Orcadians, and perhaps even further afield, perhaps even the whole of ancient Britain. The site itself, which lies between the already discovered ring of Brodgar, a Neolithic stone circle that has its own mysteries, as well as the equally mysterious stones of Stenness, dates back to at least 3,300 BC. As of 2016, 14 structures have been discovered, with many of them being built on top of each other, suggesting perhaps an even older use of this site and a location of incredible importance to the Neolithic people of ancient Britain. Without a doubt though, the most impressive structure, known as Structure 10, which appears to be a Neolithic pyramid, is even more of a head scratcher. Yeah, I just said Neolithic pyramid. Around this site, which was used prolifically up until around 2200 BCE, after which it abruptly stopped, archaeologists have since discovered the bones of approximately 400 cattle, around which the carcasses of several red deer were placed, with many of their tibia bones being cracked and extracted for marrow, suggesting the site of a feast. Do you know what's weirder though? During this event there is also evidence of the temple being largely destroyed, brick by brick. Seemingly, for some reason, the Neolithic Orcadians built this site as a place of incredible importance, used it for 1,000 years, and then one day threw a party and tore the whole thing down. I have no idea guys, but most importantly, I want to know.
Number 5. The Ghost Bride of Galvez. To Texans, it's no secret that Hotel Galvez is haunted. The Grand Galvez, as it's known now, first opened its doors in 1911, and since then has been said to be home to all manner of haunting, but the most retold story is that of Audra, the Ghost Bride of Galvez. Audra was a 25-year-old bride-to-be getting married there. Her betrothed was a young sailor who would frequently leave her on her lonesome while he was out on a voyage. During the periods where the sea would separate the two lovers, Audra would rent out room 501, climb out the ladder to the rooftop, and wait on the rooftop turret with love in her heart for her sweetheart to return. Now one day during a catastrophic storm, Audra was told that her fiance's ship capsized, and overcome with grief, Audra took her own life on the roof of the hotel. Tragically, as if this wasn't sad enough, her groom would arrive a few days later, eager to surprise and re-encounter his bride as he'd survived the capsizing. And although he was never able to be with her physically again, if you believe the stories, she might still linger around the premises. Visitors claim that Audra frequents the 5th floor, and in particular, her spirit tends to hang around the matrimonial suite and room 501. Some claim they hear random doors slamming, or strong currents of chills, flickering lights, the usual who's who of a ghost haunting a hotel. Other stories tell of seeing a candle lit on the rooftop, wondering if it's the ghost of Audra still waiting for her beloved to come back to her. The attendants at the Galvez claim that there's difficulties making electronic keys for room 501 since they're prone to malfunction frequently. Visitors to the Galvez go out specifically looking for Audra now, hoping to catch a glimpse of the spirit. If you ever go to Texas, be sure to check it out if you're brave enough. And if you're looking for more freaky stories, true crime, ghosts, cryptids, basically the whole 9 yards, Top 5 Scary has all of that and then some. So click on that bell and click on through and subscribe and find something to scream at. But do that at the end of this video, okay? We got way more mysteries in Texas coming up. Number 4, the Icebox Killer. The Icebox Killer refers to an incredibly grisly crime that haunted Houston, and if you believe the conspiracies, might be entangled in a much larger web of interest. Take a listen to this brutal crime. On June 23, 1965, 2 Houston police officers were sent for a fairly benign wellness check and went to investigate the home of a suburban family, the Rogers, Fred and Edwina, and their son Charles. Edwina's nephew was concerned because he hadn't seen or heard from his aunt in a concerning amount of time. The 2 officers went to check the house and got no response from a knock. A look around in the backyard, they found a makeshift barricade on the back door, which was more than a little suspicious, so they entered the house. One of the 2 detectives opened the fridge instinctively and saw a pile of raw meat in the fridge. The detective dismissed it as boar or pig, and you can probably see where this is going. They opened the vegetable crisper and were disgusted at what they found: the heads of Edwina and Fred Rogers. Police suspected initially that the son Charles had been behind it, but why? No one was particularly sure. Now, here's where this already upsetting strange case gets wild. There are allegations that Charles Rogers was present the day of the JFK assassination, and some allege he was one of the 3 tramps photographed with police escort by Dealey Plaza. The conspiracy alleges that Charles Rogers, who was a former Marine and served in the Office of Naval Intelligence, was involved somehow in the larger assassination plot, and the claim is that somehow his parents discovered his involvement with the conspiracy and he had to silence them and flee. A bold claim, but Charles Rogers was never found. No proof of a body, despite being declared dead. Now, did he vanish? Or was he himself silenced to tie up a loose knot as part of something infinitely larger than himself? We may never truly have the answers for this one.
Coming up next at number 3, St. John's Dance. And you may have heard mention of this one before, but perhaps not in this context. You see, it's important that we note that in modern times, St. John's Dance or St. Vitus's Dance is a terrible disease also known as Sydenham's chorea that affects the nervous system and results in a series of hysterical jerking movements of the limbs often exhibited in young children. Generally speaking, it isn't infectious, but that doesn't figure to explain the countless records of mass hysterical dancing that occurred throughout history, of literally thousands of people across Europe being afflicted by a manic need to dance. The earliest known outbreak occurred in the 7th century and was primarily thought to occur during times of intense hardship, particularly affecting the peasant and working classes. So what? You're a peasant in Dark Age Europe and all of a sudden you just start dancing and can't stop, somehow infecting the rest of your village, town or city until there's a horde of people doing the exact same thing, potentially collapsing from exhaustion or dying from a heart attack. Well, yeah, because that's exactly what happened. One of the most well-documented cases was in 1518 in the Austrian city of Strasbourg, where a woman named Frau Troffia began dancing in the streets, and within a month, 400 people had joined her. Yeah, she danced for a month, and loads of people died. Now, there are many theories on the true explanation of St. John's Dance, and scholars still argue as to whether it truly was a real contagious disease or merely a social phenomenon. One of those theories suggests a particular fungi had infected their crops, and another suggests that it was all a misunderstanding and St. John's Dance was actually the practice of some secretive European cult. Yeah. Beats me, guys. Swinging in at number 2, the remains of Richard III. And this one, strangely enough, is the perfect blend of ancient mystery and potentially contemporary unexplainable intrigue. Because that's exactly what you all came for, right? Also, I mean, this one is already pretty much solved, but it's in the details where its mystery truly shines. We all know Richard III, right? A horse, my kingdom for a horse. But well, apparently this woman, Scottish author and historian Philippa Langley, knew him a little bit better than anyone else did. Now, it's important to note that history had long forgotten the final resting place of Richard III, the last Plantagenet King of England, and after his defeat at the Battle of Bosworth, his remains were scattered to the winds of history. After all, history is written by the winners. Well, let's fast forward to modern times when in September 2012, Philippa Langley led an excavation of a car park in Leicester city centre. A few signs pointed toward it potentially being the ruined remains of Greyfriars Church, but in the words of Langley, she had a strange feeling, one that she couldn't quite place, and something was telling her that Richard III was buried beneath that very car park. Now, the dig team was on a very tight budget and only had one chance at excavating a tiny portion of the car park. And guess what? The exact place that Philippa Langley had a strange feeling about turned out to be the final resting place of Richard III's remains. And not only that, but the parking space that he was buried beneath was marked with a large painted R on the tarmac, used to signify a reserved parking space. I mean, all of this can be explained away, right? Eventually someone would have found the remains of the dead king, but you can't deny the fact that the strange cosmic coincidence that led Langley to his final resting place is much more mysterious than a dead English king in a car park. And finally, coming in at a #1 spot, the Tunguska event. And I absolutely love this entry for its cosmic significance alone and the potential warning sign that we should all be very wary of. Let's head on over to remote Siberia, where on the bright summer morning of the 30th of June 1908, a massive impact explosion, the likes of which has never before been seen in human history, completely flattened a remote area of the Siberian wilderness, covering over 2,000 square kilometers of isolated forest. As far as we know, no one was caught in the blast, but if they were, they would have certainly been obliterated by a shockwave 1,000 times greater than that of the Hiroshima atomic bomb. The Tunguska explosion completely flattened over 80 million trees in its blast radius, rupturing their roots like grass to a lawnmower. 50 or so miles away, those native to the region were knocked flat on their feet by the blast, windows shattered and buildings subsided. For all intents and purposes, it was the result of an unimaginable power, and if Tunguska had occurred over a metropolitan area, an entire city would have likely been flattened. So, what was it? Well, the leading scientific consensus is that the explosion of the Tunguska event was caused by the impact of a small asteroid, one that had possibly burned up in Earth's atmosphere and then produced a shockwave that resulted in the aforementioned cataclysm. However, not everyone buys that hypothesis, and many other researchers and scientists have proposed the Tunguska event being the result of a leak of natural gas from deep within the Earth's crust that became ignited by a storm and resulted in the Tunguska hellfire. Most evidence though points towards Tunguska being the result of an asteroid, albeit one that luckily somehow missed the vast majority of our entire populated planet. It's also important to note that researchers believe Tunguska to be the result of a small asteroid, which is a terrifying thought in itself. It poses an incredibly important question: how would our history have been shaped if the Tunguska event occurred somewhere else? What if its intended target had changed? And more importantly, are we prepared if it ever happens again?
Jumping right into number 5 is the Mary Celeste. Formerly known as the Amazon, the Mary Celeste was an American merchant brigantine under the captaincy of Benjamin Spooner Briggs. In October of 1872, Briggs would captain the Mary Celeste and prepare for the boat's first voyage. Accompanied by his wife Sarah, their young daughter Sophia, and a crew of 8 carefully selected men, Briggs would set course for Genoa, Italy on November 5th, carrying 1,701 barrels of booze. Days after their departure, another brigantine from Canada, the Dei Gratia, would set course for Gibraltar, following a similar route to the Mary Celeste. On December 4th, 1872, the helmsman of the Dei Gratia reported that a strange vessel was heading unsteadily towards it from about 10 kilometers or 6 miles away. The unidentified ship's strange and erratic movements tipped off to the Dei Gratia's captain that something was wrong, and the Canadian brigantine would proceed with caution. As the mysterious ship drew close, members of the crew noticed that there was no one on it, and when it wouldn't respond to any signals sent to it from the Dei Gratia, 2 crew members would board the ship in order to investigate. It was at this point that the pair would find out that this mysterious empty ship was the Mary Celeste. The sails on the abandoned brig were set in poor condition, much of the rigging was damaged, ropes hung loosely over the sides, the compass was broken, a significant amount of water was found in the boat, and its only lifeboat was missing. However, all of the ship's cargo remained relatively intact. The 2 crewmates also found the ship's daily log in a cabin. Its final entry dated at 8 a.m. on November 25th, 9 days earlier. The log places the Mary Celeste's last known position nearly 750 kilometers, which is 400 nautical miles, away. The Dei Gratia and its crew would split up in order to bring the Mary Celeste to their destination, Gibraltar, where they would sell the ship in order to be salvaged. The disappearance of the Mary Celeste's crew is a mystery to behold, as the remains of Captain Briggs, his family, and his crew have yet to be found to this day. And over those years, various theories and explanations have been made. Some say there was an accidental explosion caused by one of the barrels of alcohol aboard the ship. Water spouts damaging the ship is another theory, pirates, or even alien abduction. Personally, I think the crew may have taken the lifeboat deep into the ocean and perished while lost at sea. Make sure to comment below your own theories on the matter. Anyway, regardless of how it happened, the Mary Celeste acts as one of the earliest examples of the Bermuda Triangle's mysterious nature and highlights the dangers that comes with venturing into the unknown. Next up at number 4 is the Great Isaac K Lighthouse. Constructed in the mid-19th century on a remote island in the Bahamas, the Great Isaac K Lighthouse was a beacon of hope for any mariners trying to navigate the treacherous waters. It stood tall, proud, and bright, warning sailors of the rocks that lurked beneath the waves. The island it was on was desolate, only accessible by boat and inhabited by the keepers of the lighthouse, John and William. It was the keeper's job to make sure the beacon's light remained operational, while performing a fair share of arduous and difficult tasks in order to maintain the lighthouse. And I know, this is starting to sound a lot like the movie The Lighthouse, but this story ends a whole lot differently. On the fateful day of August 4th, 1969, shortly after a storm, a supply ship is scheduled to bring essentials for the keepers, such as food, toilet paper, and the like. However, when the ship arrives, it's met with an eerie silence. When the supply crew noticed that the lighthouse was strangely unlit, they immediately alerted authorities, and a search party was dispatched to the island. Upon arrival, the search party found the lighthouse deserted and the island it rested on just as desolate. The only clues were some open doors and entries missing from the lightkeeper's log, which only left more questions than answers. Theories and rumors quickly began to circulate after the sudden disappearance, many claiming the two lightkeepers were taken by pirates or robbers. Some thought they were killed in a storm. But honestly, if I was stuck on a remote island taking care of a lighthouse, I'd probably find a way to disappear too. Though deep down, we already know who, or rather what, was to blame: the mysterious nature of the Bermuda Triangle. A year after the incident, the Great Isaac K Lighthouse was made to be automated so that no other inexplicable disappearances could occur again, and John and William were never seen or heard from again after the incident, marking another unsolved mystery stemming from the Devil's Triangle.
In at 3, Villa de Vecchi. Just east of Lake Como in the forested mountains of Cortanova lies a house that is said to be haunted, nicknamed the Red House, Ghost Mansion and Casa della Stray. Built between 1854 to 1857 as the summer residence of Count Felix de Vecchi. However, as most creepy stories go, a few short years after its completion, the house witnessed an inexplicable string of tragedies that would forever haunt its walls. First, architect Alessandro Sodoli died a year before the villa was completed, and many would later speculate his death was the first omen. The family moved in nonetheless, and during the spring and summer months they led an idyllic and, well, brief existence. Sometime in 1862 things took a turn when the Count returned home to find his wife brutally murdered and daughter missing. He then put on a lengthy and sadly unsuccessful search for his daughter before committing suicide that same year. The villa was then passed on to Felix's brother Diego, who continued to live on the estate with his family until World War II, after which time they vacated for good. The house bounced around various owners and renters for a while until being left permanently uninhabited by the 1960s. Naturally, elements have taken over the home, but the large majority of damage has been done by humans. Graffiti covers the walls and almost everything in the house has been vandalized. However, its rumors of hauntings, ritualistic orgies and sacrifices is what leaves the home unoccupied. Spookier still, in 2002 an avalanche wiped out all of the surrounding homes in the area, all except the Villa de Vecchi. Now, although trespassers always return, they always leave with hauntings to report. In at 2, Los Feliz Murder Mansion. During the mid-20th century, the Los Feliz Mansion was a seemingly happy home. For a short time, that is. It housed Dr. Harold Perelson and his family until the horrific night of December 6, 1959. It was on that night that Harold struck his wife to death with a hammer, severely beating his daughter, then ended his own life using a concoction of water, acid and tranquilizer pills. Now, for the next 50 years, the murder mansion would remain completely untouched and uninhabited by anyone. 1 year after the horrific events, the home was sold to a couple, Emily and Julian Enriquez, who only used the mansion as a storage unit. Imagine being that rich. Lucky for some. Neighbors recall seeing the couple bringing boxes to the house but never staying the night. Jump forward to 1994 and Rudy Enriquez inherited the house and, like his parents, refused to stay overnight. Local residents have shared their stories of the tragic mansion, some claiming through grimy windows you can see a 1950s style television set, a Christmas tree and supposedly neatly wrapped gifts. The furniture is rumored to be covered in a thick layer of dust, and the living room remains the exact same as it was that one December night back in 1959. Now, although no one has been formally invited into the home, that hasn't stopped trespassers from having picnics in the garden, with many alleging that the house is haunted, with one trespasser stating that she was bitten by a black widow spider upon trying to break in. No one knows what prompted Dr. Perelson to murder his wife and commit suicide, with some speculating financial woes, while others have dug up old unconfirmed rumours of Dr. Perelson having been secretly hospitalised. Jump forward to 2019, what remains is an even larger mystery in a haunted home that no one can enter. And finally, coming in at number 1, Jean Harlow's house. Los Angeles seems to be the hub for paranormal activity, or perhaps it's because it's the hub for movies and everyone is a storyteller. We'll never know. Anyway, in LA you can find this Bavarian-style home in Beverly Hills, which has a truly gruesome history. In 1932 it was home to Jean Harlow and her abusive husband Paul Byrne for about 2 months before he shot himself in the head while standing in front of the mirror. Their butler discovered him and called MGM instead of the police. So of course there were a ton of rumours that it wasn't suicide and in turn a cover-up. Prime suspect was Byrne's ex-girlfriend, a suspicion that was exasperated by her jumping off a boat a couple days after. Following the death, Jean moved out of the home but died at the age of 26 only a few years later. However, it gets creepier. In 1963, celebrity hairstylist Jay Sebring bought the home and lived there with Sharon Tate until she left him for Roman Polanski. They were still friends even up until they were both murdered by Charles Manson's cult. However, when Jay and Sharon lived in the Harlow house, Sharon reportedly told several friends of some strange goings on within the home. An example being once when she was sleeping in the master bedroom, she saw a creepy little man, with some of her friends stating that she believed it was the ghost of Paul Byrne. According to sources, she was so freaked out when she saw the ghost that she ran out of the room and then saw a hanging shadowy corpse with its throat slit in the hallway, which resembles quite closely how Sharon Tate was murdered.
Number 1. The Gurdon Light in Arkansas. Near a railroad in Arkansas flies an incredible unsolved mystery. Floating above and around the tracks, the bright light has been seen in many colors. Orange, blue, pink, green, you name it. Hundreds of people hike for hours in search of the railroad, hoping to see the light for themselves. The locals believe that the light is the ghost of a railroad worker, as the light resembles lanterns that workers used to carry around. This belief is further supported by the case of William McLean and Louis McBride. In 1931, William fired Louis, which led to Louis ending William's life. The reason behind Louis being fired is publicly disputed. Some people say that Louis had messed with part of the train track in such a way that a train may derail, while others say Louis had asked William for more hours and then was denied the request. Louis McBride later claimed that he had ended William's life after he'd been accused of tampering with the train tracks. Louis McBride was sentenced to the electric chair, and the glowing light made its first appearance shortly after. There have been several documentary crews hoping to reveal the mystery of the light. Even scientists have attempted to find the cause, but no theory has ever been proven. Some have attempted to say that it is merely highway lights, but according to historians, the light appeared before the highway lights did. Others have said that the light is made from underground crystals with extreme pressure being placed on them, causing them to charge and then release sparks. Neither theory has ever been confirmed. The light still glows to this day, and if you want to see it, head down to Arkansas on an overcast day and wait until nightfall. Then you may be fortunate enough to catch a glimpse of the Gurdon Light. Number 2. The Black Forest Haunting. Moving is a scary experience, but nobody ever thinks that it's going to be deadly. In the middle of a Colorado forest laid a secluded, fully furnished home. Alex Lee had just purchased it and was moving in with his children and wife. Unbeknownst to them, the previous owner failed to include haunted on the house's amenity list. The family began to experience strange occurrences, repugnant odors, flashing lights, and strange sounds. The family attributed these to random bad luck, but when shadowy figures began lurking in the forest, embarrassed and the odor turned into a painful chemical burn that would tug at their throats, noses, and eyes, the family decided to take some action. They installed motion detectors, thinking that they were the victims of some annoying pranks from teens. But the motion detectors began to alert them even when seemingly nothing was there. The system had detected 62 break-ins, and the authorities had traveled to the home over 40 times, never finding any evidence of criminal activity. Steve Lee decided to install more cameras into the home, allowing him to see the beings. He caught random flashes of light, glowing orbs, and disconfigured creatures with faces. The family had once come home to all of their lights flashing, the sounds of footsteps on their roof, and orchestral music with rattling chains coming from the woods. Finally, the family realized they needed to find someone with expertise in the paranormal, so they called the hit supernatural sighting show Sightings. The crew arrived and were greeted by the ghosts with the same amount of kindness the family had been, 0. The crew's cameras were knocked off of tripods, something attempted to possess a producer, and the medium declared that there were at least 20 spirits in the house. A shaman theorized that the house was built on top of a portal between two realms, living and dead, making it a hotspot for demonic entities to prowl. Though the spirits passing through weren't all necessarily harming the family or haunting them, they were passing through, which explains the multitude of disturbances. Others theorized that nothing supernatural was occurring at the home. Instead, they believed that it was the location of top secret government experiments. Steve Lee even claims to have seen uniformed and armored men lurking around the property.
Coming in at 3, please stop moving the kitchen table. Uploaded to my uni days by a user named Barbara, this story tells the haunting tale of ghosts that just won't stop messing with the kitchen table. I quote, "My house was fraught with weird stuff happening when we first moved in. The kitchen table would move overnight 12 to 18 inches. My keys will disappear and show up in the weirdest places like my quilt trunk." I don't know who has a quilt trunk these days, but this person does. "My son Christopher went into the basement and things came flying off the shelf at him. He also saw someone walking on our wraparound porch once, but no one was there. The most obvious one was a few years ago. Twice this happened. I was sweeping the kitchen floor. The door to the porch started shaking uncontrollably. It was like someone was trying to open the door without turning the knob. It lasted about 15 seconds. Keep in mind this is a wraparound porch completely enclosed. I knew it was bad because my dogs, who will bark at a butterfly flying past the window, all looked up at the door and stepped back. Both times it happened, I was doing the same thing about the same time at night. By the way, as a side note, I walked into the kitchen table one night while going to the bathroom. It was not the first time I walked into the kitchen table because it was moved. So I just said, please stop moving the kitchen table, and it never moved again. Spooky stuff. Do you believe Barbara's story? And if so, who do you think the ghost was? Former resident of the home perhaps, or just someone who was obsessed with moving kitchen tables? Perhaps a former interior designer? You never know. You don't know the story. Coming in at number 2, Demon in the Dark. Another creepy ghost story uploaded to my uni days. This one comes from a guy named Dave, who explains his very real encounter with a scary demon. My family travelled to the south of France to stay in a cottage owned by someone my dad worked with. The owners visited occasionally, but that summer it was free and we had 10 days booked in there. After a long 2 days on the road, we drove down a steep driveway towards a secluded mill cottage, with the water wheel sat static alongside the stone house. There was a deep cellar with stone stairs down under the wheel next to the house, and a small river circled the place. We went into the house and chose rooms, but being set down in small copes, the house was a draft and cold from lack of use. And we settled in and turned all of the heating on, yet the house remained cold and felt damp. The first night we had set a fire in the living room and listened to a couple of my audiobooks before my sister and I went to sleep. My parents stayed up a little longer than went to bed. Around midnight they both woke up at exactly the same time, and the door to their bedroom was opening slowly. At first they thought it was my sister, until they saw a large dark silhouette of a man framed in the doorway, standing stock still, just looking in their direction as if appraising them. After a short period the shape turned and started to move as if satisfied, and disappeared completely. They looked at each other but didn't speak, and both went back to sleep. The next morning the house felt warm and dry, and sunlight was back through the windows as if something had lifted and accepted them. They spoke the next day and both agreed that although they were skeptics, it could not have been anything other than something supernatural in that doorway, deciding their worth. What do you guys think about that one? Demon encounter? Intruder? Or just trick of the light? Do you think there was a man there, or is this all pretend? You tell me. I think it was just an old house that took a little while to heat up. but that's not very scary, is it? And finally, coming in at number 1, Hotel Cecil. Of course, there is no building more haunted than the Cecil Hotel that has numerous unexplained deaths and hauntings that are still ongoing today, even after it changed its name to Stay on Main. Creepier still, there's an entire list of suicides reported on its Wikipedia page, with the first reported case happening in 1931, followed by a long string of similar deaths in 1932, 1934, 1937, 1938, 1939 and 1940. The 30s were not a good time for the Cecil, that's for sure. During the same time, other tenants of the building also died by suicide, and one man was pinned to the exterior wall by a truck. In 1962, a woman jumped from the 9th floor window and landed on a pedestrian, killing them both. In 1964, tenant Goldie Osgood was brutally murdered, which had remained unsolved. And of course, one of the most famous cases is that of Elisa Lam, a 21-year-old traveller who was found dead in the rooftop water tank of the hotel after guests began to complain of a funky taste. Now, with this number, it isn't so much the ghosts themselves that are the unsolved haunting, but the hotel itself, which seems to curse anyone who stays in it or near it.
So, the Jones house was the home of the Jones family, who believed they lived with ghosts. And this all started on one evening in 1993 when the matriarch of the family, Denise, was preparing dinner and she heard her son Michael screaming, like holy terror level. She went to his room and found him curled up, frightened, shaking, and well, screaming. He told her that he saw the face of a strange looking man smiling at him, who touched his shoulder and then disappeared. Poor little one was just this many years old, and this was the beginning of something that would last his entire life. Shortly after the incident, the family was at Denise's parents' house when Michael began yelling again. He told Denise and her parents that a man in a picture on the wall was the same one he had seen in his room. This was Denise's grandfather, who had died 17 years earlier, and Michael had never met him. He'd also never seen a picture of him before. He soon felt better because he felt like his great-grandfather was watching over him. Then he claimed that evil spirits were in the house and that they wanted to take him to their side. So Denise brought in a paranormal investigator, John Zaffis, to investigate him and the house. And he's pretty sure that Michael's ghost sightings were genuine. Another ghost that Michael claimed to see was an evil spirit he called the Shadow Man, which was a darker apparition that looked like a shadow that Michael saw every day. Now, his family was like, okay, this is getting a little more dangerous. One night, his parents heard strange thumping noises, and they went up to his room and found his bed shaking violently. On another occasion, Denise saw a shadow of a 6-foot-tall something or another that walked across a wall, which was apparently the Shadow Man. Then Michael claimed that the spirits were physically tormenting him with some physical harm, scratching, and biting. John believed that the spirits were about to possess the son, so Denise was like, okay, whole family's moving, out we go. But it didn't end there. These spirits followed the family. Denise was like, okay, how about an exorcism? I'll call the bishop. They got lucky. Bishop was like, yep, this needs to happen. And during the exorcism, he saw this shadow man at the church. The bishop had Michael drink holy water, which isn't a method I've heard about before. And the family was like, okay, well, if it helps, it helps. Well, it didn't. 3 weeks later, here we go again. Michael underwent 4 more exorcisms. Now, he still sees spirits, but his family's like, hey, maybe one day this is gonna stop. Look, I know Ed Warren would have known just what to do in this situation and ended it for once and for all. Just saying. Alrighty folks, time to travel over to Ireland with this legend. Look, if we know anything about Ed Warren, he loved investigating the legends of ghostly ladies haunting places, and this one is a doozy. Let's see if I get it right. Deag Dú is an Irish word for a female demon that seduces men and drains them of their life source. Iconic. The name literally translates to red consumer of fluids. Oh, well, you get what I mean. An Irish lady who was famous across the land for her beauty and who fell in love with a local peasant against her father's disapproval is said to have been the subject of a tale that originated in Celtic culture. Now, arranged marriages weren't uncommon back then, so centuries ago in the area that is now Waterford, a young girl with beauty so astounding that men were absolutely smitten with her, and women wanted to be her, was happily living day to day and had the love of a farm laborer. They made plans to marry and have descendants of their own. Granted, her dad, who wasn't a nice guy and cared nothing for love and innocence, was like, no, arranged marriage for you because I want to promise your hand to a wealthy and notoriously atrocious person in charge with a lot of power in exchange for riches and lands for, well, myself and for all of my remaining offspring. So the marriage was arranged, the date was set, and all the begging in the world from our poor bride-to-be was not enough to move the cold, empty heart of her father or her betrothed. So on the day of the wedding, everybody dressed in their finery, and the bride was a vision of beauty, dressed in red, gold, and we're all gonna party throughout the night. But one person sat away from them all, damning her father and vowing to seek revenge on those who had cost her her love and life. Turns out this new husband with all this power, yeah, he was a little bit harmful. well, a lot of it harmful, and very controlling, more so than his new wife could have ever imagined. To him, this new wife was nothing but a trophy to be locked away for his pleasure only, savoring the knowledge that she was his and his alone. She was so depressed, I wonder why, so lonely with a complete absence of hope that she just wasted away. Not drinking, not eating, just existing, her life gone long before her body gave in. Her burial was a modest affair. Her husband had already taken another wife before she was cold body. And her family was too much obsessed with their wealth and their greed to give her a second thought. One man did grieve though, her lost love. He visited her grave every single day, telling her of his undying love and praying for her return to his arms. Sadly, his love was not the driving force for her resurrection. Revenge was a force that pulled her from her grave on the first anniversary of her death. Consumed with anger and the need for retribution, she climbed from her coffin and headed straight to her parents' home. As her father lay sleeping, she touched her lips to his and sucked the life out of him. But that wasn't enough. She called upon her callous husband, finding him surrounded by women, fulfilling his lustful desires, and oblivious to the dead bride, and she launched on him, sending everybody else screaming. She was so full of fury and fire that she not only drew every breath, but drained every ounce of red fluid from his twisted and cruel body. Scarlet liquid surging through her, she felt more alive than she had ever been before, and she had a hunger that could not be satisfied. So eager to satisfy this, the love who had wished her back to life was forgotten, and such was his good fortune, for he would have been another victim of her lust. Our corpse bride used her beauty to prey on young men, luring them to their demise with seduction, the promise of her body the reward. Instead, well, she sank her teeth into their exposed necks and drank their fluids to quench her thirst and desire, but it was never enough. The warm, red elixir of life gave her strength and immortality, and she hungered for her next feast. Her remains are buried in Waterford, in a place known as Strongbow's Tree. Her lustful yearning can only be satisfied on the day she died, so on the eve of her anniversary, locals gather and position rocks upon her grave so that she will not rise and take the elixir of the innocent. Sometimes the rocks are displaced, forgotten, or her desire is stronger than any stone could ever be, and she walks into the night, tempting folks to fall victim to her beauty and her lust. Look, I feel like Ed Warren could have absolutely put an end to this for once and for all, and probably should have visited this place before he passed, and acknowledged the legend.
And at number 3, Yuki Onishi. Yuki was a 5-year-old girl who disappeared during a celebration of Greenery Day on April 29, 2005. To celebrate this Japanese holiday, she and her family, along with about 60 other people, went to a bamboo shoot digging event. Yuki was digging up bamboo shoots with some of the other kids and went to show her mother the first one she found, and then she wandered off back into the forest to find some more. After 20 or so minutes passed, her mother realized that she was not with the other kids. Her mother got the other adults to help her look for her daughter. A few minutes later, after they couldn't find her, they called the police, who also contacted the fire department for extra assistance. They even brought a police dog to try and track her scent. The dog reached a spot in the nearby forest and then stopped. 4 other dogs were brought in, and all of them led the search party to the exact same spot. It's as though she just vanished. On top of the dogs and the police department, 3,000 people helped search for her, but there were no clues to go off of. There were no clothing shards, no blood, there weren't even any footprints to go off of. Still to this day, no trace of Yuki has been found. Coming in at number 2, Inokashira Park. Back in 1994, on April 23rd, a garbage bag was found by a cleaning staff member of Tokyo's Inokashira Park. The staff member noticed a horrible smell coming from the bag. She assumed it was raw fish. But when her colleague went to open the bag, she glanced inside and saw a human ankle. But that wasn't all. Along with the ankle, there were 24 pieces of human flesh, including 2 hands, 2 feet, and a shoulder. To make this case even weirder, if that's even possible, all of the parts were completely drained of blood. And each piece of flesh was cut out at exactly 20 centimeters. The police were called in, an autopsy was performed, however the cause of death was deemed unknown. Also, a third of the body, including her head, were never found. 3 days after the body parts were discovered, they were identified as belonging to 35-year-old architect named Shichi Kawamura. He was last seen on April 21st, so 2 days before the body parts were discovered, and lived 5 minutes from the park. The police were determined to find this man's killer. They even questioned thousands of people. During these interviews, they found out that one witness saw 2 suspicious men walking in the park carrying a plastic bag around 4 a.m. on the day the body was found. Police assumed that he was struck by a car and that the killers cut him up to get rid of the body. But that's just speculation, and to this day, this case remains unsolved. And in at number 1, Baby on Board. This is a really messed up and disgusting story. Back in 1988, on March 18th, a man returned home to his apartment in Nagoya. Oddly, when he got to his front door, he noticed it was unlocked and all the lights were off. Once inside, he changed his clothes and began to get ready for bed. It was then that he heard a baby crying. He followed the sound and came across across the mutilated body of his 27-year-old pregnant wife with his now newborn son laying at her feet. His wife was bound and strangled to death. After she was dead, it was suspected that the killer then proceeded to cut her stomach open and deliver the baby. He even cut the umbilical cord. The infant somehow survived, but no one ever found out who committed this horrible crime. The police came to investigate, and they believed that the wife was caught off guard in her home after the intruder broke in through the front door. After a short struggle, the intruder wrapped an electrical cord around the woman's neck and suffocated her. He then cut a vertical 38-centimeter slit in her belly and removed the live baby. He cut the umbilical cord, took some money from the woman's purse, and then left. Her husband didn't return home until hours later. Upon inspection of her body, it was noticed that something had been crammed into the now empty cavity in her stomach. It turns out the intruder put a phone and car keys into the hole in the woman's stomach where the baby used to be. While their story was told, the names of this husband and wife were never publicly released by the police.
In fifth place, we have the unexplained Phoenix Lights. On March 13th of 1997, which just so happens to be the year I was born, a string of 5 lights in a V formation appeared in the sky above Phoenix, Arizona. The National UFO Reporting Center reported that the first call about the lights came in at around 8:16 p.m. from a retired police officer in Paulden, which is about 2 hours north of Phoenix. After that, the National UFO Reporting Center began to receive a slew of calls from south of Paulden, suggesting that the lights were moving in a southeastern direction. There are more than 700 witnesses who saw the lights, including pilots, police officers, and military officials who lit up the National UFO Reporting Center switchboard, demanding explanations, and rightfully so. Most of the witnesses described the lights as part of a singular massive craft that made no noise. Around 10 p.m., a second set of as many as, 9 lights appeared in the sky. A laser printer technician named Dana Valentine claimed to witness the craft from his yard in Phoenix, saying that he could see the outline of the mass behind the lights and was certain what he saw was technology unknown to mankind. Air traffic controllers could not see the lights on the radar, despite seeing them in the sky with their own eyes. Frances Barwood, the Phoenix City Councilwoman who launched an investigation into the event, said that out of the over 700 witnesses, 700 that she interviewed, the government never interviewed even one. This is once again where I'm giving the US government some well-deserved side-eye. How do you not interview a single witness out of 700? That is way too many people for this to not be credible. And once again, like I've said many times before here, so many witnesses happen to be credible air personnel. I'm sensing a pattern of behavior here and not a good one. In fourth place, we have a case of reincarnation. In the 1940s, Florence and John Pollock were married, and in 1946, after having 2 sons, they welcomed their first daughter, who was named Joanna. In 1951, Florence gave birth to another baby girl named Jacqueline. Despite their age differences, the 2 girls had an extremely close bond. Joanna liked to take care of Jacqueline and saw herself as the ultimate big sister. Since her mother was busy running the family's grocery delivery business, Joanna saw herself as a second mother to her little sister. They enjoyed playing dress up and pretending, and generally enjoyed being around each other. Thank goodness, because parentification is often more traumatizing than beneficial. Eerily, Joanna would always state that she would never grow up to become a lady, that she would remain young forever. No one took her seriously and chalked it up to a very creative imagination. Kinda like how I've always had. On May 7th of 1957, mid-single digits-year-old Jacqueline and double-digits-year-old Joanna were walking to church with a neighborhood boy, as they often did. While they were walking, a car came up behind them and it hit them going at an incredibly high speed, killing all 3. The Pollock sisters died instantly, and the boy they were with died from his injuries at the hospital. The woman who was driving the car had just lost her wards in a custody battle and was feeling angry and upset and was actually trying to take her own life. While learning about her ward's deaths, Florence fell into a deep depression that lasted a very long time. John, on the other hand, had the spiritual belief that the girls were in heaven or that they'd be reincarnated. He said he would have dreams about the girls and also felt some sort of presence in their bedroom. He claimed that every time he would go in there, he felt like he wasn't alone, like they were watching over him. Now, John apparently always had a fascination with reincarnation and would pray to God to bring his daughters back. Okay. Florence, on the other hand, was a very strict Catholic and never toyed with any of John's notions about reincarnation. This put such a strain on their relationship that they almost got a divorce. However, somehow, they stayed together and got pregnant again. Congrats, I guess. From the beginning of the pregnancy, John thought that there were 2 babies, despite the doctor only claiming 1. However, John kept insisting that there were 2, and the doctor was proven wrong on the day that the twins, Jillian and Jennifer, were born on October 4th of 1958. Twins never ran in the family, and Florence never felt like she had 2 fetuses growing inside of her. Eerily, the newborn twins had the exact same birthmarks that Joanna and Jacqueline had, and Florence started to seriously consider her husband's beliefs as more than just nonsense. When the twins were old enough to talk, they began identifying and requesting toys that belonged to their sisters, who had passed on, and would point out landmarks that only Joanna and Jacqueline would have known, like the school they attended. They would sometimes panic upon seeing cars and knew about street safety without either of their parents telling them about it. The story of the Pollock sisters made its way to Dr. Ian Stevenson, a psychologist who studied reincarnation. After studying thousands of reincarnation cases, Dr. Stevenson wrote a book telling of 14 cases he believed to have been real, including that of the Pollock sisters. Reincarnation is such a wild thing to think about. Personally, I don't know if I'd want to start all over with all the current knowledge and trauma that I have and then add more. I think I'd rather just be wiped clear and restart. Nah. Let me know in the comments what you think though, and if you want to be reincarnated or just hit restart.
And at number 3, Icebox Murders. Back on June 23rd of 1965, a patrolman in Houston made a standard stop-in visit at the home of Fred and Awinda Rogers. This patrolman named Charles Bullock said the couple were so nice and sweet that he just wanted to stop in and say hello. Once there, he went inside but noticed the house was empty. He was about to leave but then noticed an odd smell coming from the fridge. So he opened it to check it out. About this, he said, "I opened up a refrigerator and seen nothing but meat stacked in it. My partner standing next to me made the comment that it looked like somebody had butchered a hog. We didn't know it was a body until we got ready to close the refrigerator and we could see the head down in the bottom of the vegetable bin." After this murder was reported, an examiner came in and revealed that the couple had been killed a week before they were placed in the refrigerator. Fred had his head crushed in and his insides flushed down the toilet, and Edwina had been brutally beaten and shot. So who would want to do this to a sweet elderly couple? Well, the killer was never found, but the prime suspect was always the couple's 43-year-old son, Charles. And that was basically because he disappeared without a trace after the murder. Charles also became a suspect after one of his former friends came forward, claiming Charles was physically and emotionally abused by his parents from a young age. It's also said that Charles owned the house his parents were living in and that they constantly took out loans in his name. Coming in at number 2, Bear Brook Murders. The Bear Brook Murders, also referred to as the Allenswood Four, are 4 unidentified female murder victims. Their decomposed, beaten bodies were found in trash bags in 1985 and 2000 in New Hampshire in the Bear Brook State Park. When found, all the girls were either partially or completely skeletonized. They were believed to have died between 1977 and 1985. The children's faces were reconstructed several times by sketch artists. For years, no one had come forward claiming to know the names of these victims, and the killer was unknown. In 2017, investigators announced that they believed a man named Terry Peter Rasmussen was the killer. DNA actually confirmed that he was the father of 2 of the 4 girls, but nothing was ever proven, and he was convicted of a different murder and died in prison in 2010. And in at number 1, the Grimes sisters. This story takes place in Chicago. One day in December of 1956, 2 sisters, 15-year-old Barbara and 13-year-old Patricia, went to see the new Elvis movie, Love Me Tender, but they never made it home after the movie. This turned into one of the biggest missing persons cases in Chicago history. Everyone was out looking for them. Hundreds of police officers were assigned full time to search for the missing sisters. Even Elvis himself sent out a message asking for them to return safely to their family. Sadly, a month later, their naked, lifeless bodies were found dumped on the side of a road behind a guardrail. To this day, no one knows who killed them. An autopsy report was able to show that the girls were murdered within 5 hours after their last confirmed sighting. Many people reported seeing the girls alive in the weeks following their disappearance, but all of these leads just led police to dead ends. Coming in at our number 5 spot, Boy in the Box. This is a case that takes place all the way back from February 23rd, 1957 in Philadelphia. A man was checking his muskrat traps in the woods when he noticed a little boy's lifeless body inside an abandoned bassinet. This man decided not to report what he found because of the fact that his muskrat traps were illegal, and he didn't want to get in trouble. Then 2 days later, a college student named Frederick Boyce came across the same body, and he told police about it the next day. This little boy was left completely naked, and his hands and feet were wrinkled as if he had been submerged in water before he died. Also, upon inspection, it was revealed that his esophagus contained a dark substance, suggesting that he might have vomited right before he died. The investigators also discovered the little boy was hit in the head with something several times. This case drew in a lot of media attention, but no one ever came forward to identify this boy. A sketch was even drawn up to show what this boy looked like when he was alive. He became known as the Boy in the Box, as well as America's Unknown Child. So for many, many years, the case was just sitting there with no leads. But then in 2002, some progress was made when a psychiatrist claimed a patient of hers named Mary confided that her parents had bought America's unknown child and used him as a sex toy. Mary said that her mother was bathing the boy when he started throwing up. Mary's mother got so angry that she beat him to death. Mary then said that she helped her mother put his dead body in a box and helped carry him out to the woods and then left him there. The police did believe Mary. However, when the press got a hold of her name, she left the country and no further efforts were made into investigating this case. So yes, Mary was unstable, but her story sounds pretty believable to me. Do you guys think she was telling the truth? Let me know down below. And at number 4, Elizabeth Short. Back in 1947, the dismembered body of a woman was discovered in a vacant lot in Los Angeles. The body was found completely drained of blood. Also, her face was slashed from her mouth to her ear. She was also posed with her hands placed over her head, her elbows were bent, and her legs were spread. Her intestines were also cut and tucked underneath her butt. Obviously, the authorities were called, and then they identified the body as Elizabeth Short, who was a 22-year-old aspiring actress who, at the time, was dating a married salesman. 9 days after the body was discovered, a weird envelope was sent to the Los Angeles Examiner and the Los Angeles papers. The envelope contained Short's birth certificate, pictures, and some of her personal belongings. Then 2 days later, another letter was sent. This letter included a time and location where the killer would show up to meet the police. So the police went to this place at the time the killer said, but no one ever showed up. The same day, the police received another note saying, "Have changed my mind, you would not give me a square deal." This killing was justified. To this day, no one knows who killed this woman, and it's said to be one of the most baffling unsolved murder cases in history.
Coming in at number 3, we have the Bermuda Triangle. Named for the triangular shape of around 500,000 square miles of ocean between Miami, Bermuda, and Puerto Rico, for centuries the Bermuda Triangle has been mystified as a harrowing patch of ocean where sailors and pilots are prone to lose contact with the natural world and disappear forever. Back when Christopher Columbus first sailed the area, he claimed to see a giant ball of light in the sky that crashed into the horizon and made it glow. Soon after, all sorts of strange events happened in the area, including several boats mysteriously disappearing, and in one incident in 1945, an entire squadron of US torpedo bombers vanished into thin air due to all these weird instances, giving this place the name the Devil's Triangle. The exact number of ships and airplanes that have disappeared is not known, but it's estimated that around 50 ships and 20 planes have been victim to the Bermuda Triangle, and many of these mysterious disappearances of these ships and planes have never been recovered. Many see the Bermuda Triangle as a real phenomenon and have multiple theories to try and explain this mysterious place, and some of these theories are human error, paranormal explanations, violent weather like hurricanes, the Gulf Stream, which is a major surface current within the ocean, methane hydrates, which is a form of natural gas that causes bubbles to form around the ship and ultimately sink it without warning. All of these are only theories, and the Bermuda Triangle to this day is the most notorious sea legend of all time. In at number 2, we have the Gulf of Mexico's cursed shipwreck. An estimated 4,000 shipwrecks litter the seabed across the stretch of water, and the Gulf of Mexico is one of the wealthiest locations for maritime archaeology in the world. In February 2001, oil workers for ExxonMobil were laying some pipeline when they happened to stumble upon a shipwreck about 2,600 feet deep. After discovering the wreckage, a team was assembled to explore this mysterious ship, but nothing seemed to go right. The exploration submarine malfunctioned right as it was getting ready to go down to check out the wreck, and that was only the beginning of these mysterious malfunctions. Others include video monitors going out whenever they fired their thrusters, sonars breaking, and hydraulics going haywire with no explanation for any of these problems. After nothing working and things continuing to break, the Navy sent a researcher submarine down to investigate the wreckage, and on the way down it suddenly self-destructed, and somehow when it finally did get to the wreck, its arms were too short to reach anything. 6 months later, in July in 2002, a team working aboard the NR-1 decided to launch a robotic sub down to the wreck site, but the malfunctions continued. The second the rover entered the water, it veered to the right and went out of control. The tether had caught in the propellers, which caused the vessel to smash into the underside of the ship, and the rover was never recovered. Later in the summer of 2002, the curse would continue as a ship from Sustainable Sea Program of the NOAA offered to pick up artifacts from the site. The first time the vessel attempted to leave the dock, debris was lodged in the propeller. The second time, the propeller locked and the ship ended up in dry lock, needing repairs. Over the years, many others have tried to learn more about this wreck, but little was found, and what was found wasn't at all helpful. To this day, nothing has been able to get too close to the shipwreck to investigate and explore the phenomenon, and very little is known about this mysterious ship. Many believe the lives lost in the wreck continue to haunt the ship and will keep anyone and everything out of it at all costs. And finally, in at number 1 we have the unmapped ocean floor. This is truly one of the biggest mysteries, and humans' curiosity about the Earth's floor is centuries old. Much remains to be learned about the ocean, especially exploring the mystery of the deep sea. From mapping and describing the physical, biological, geological, chemical and archaeological aspects of the ocean and understanding their dynamics. For centuries, scholars believed the deep sea to be a lifeless place. Until the late 19th century, we've discovered there is a diversity of life and creatures living down there. Many researchers and divers had tried to dive and take submarines down to explore more of this unknown place, but it's very hard due to the extremely cold temperatures, the darkness, and the literally bone-shattering pressure that's more than 1,000 times that at sea level. In 2019, a retired naval officer, Victor Vescovo, set a new record as one of the deepest dives to date, reaching almost 36,000 feet down in a submarine into the deepest place on Earth, the Marianas Trench. The ocean covers more than 70% of the planet's surface, driving weather, regulating temperature, and ultimately supporting all life's organisms. Throughout history, the ocean has been a vital source of sustenance, transport, commerce, growth, and inspiration. But to this day, more than 80% of the ocean remains unmapped, unobserved, and unexplored, and it's still unknown how deep the ocean really is. Given the high degree of difficulty and cost in exploring our ocean using underwater vehicles, researchers have relied heavily on technologies such as sonar to generate maps of the seafloor, but currently less than 10% of the global ocean is mapped using modern sonar technology, and only about 35% of the United States have been mapped using modern methods. As we go deeper into the ocean floor, it's too deep for this modern technology because it's too remote and dark for this type of visual mapping. So if you go swimming in the ocean, it's very unknown of what is swimming and living below you. But scientists and researchers continue to develop technologies to unlock the many secrets of the ocean. The NOAA is working to increase our understanding of the ocean realm.
Starting off in our number 5 spot, 7. Between 1975 and 1989, there were a total of 7 unsolved murders in the Saga Prefecture. All of these cases were believed to be connected, as the victims were all killed in the same way. They were all strangled to death, they were all females, and 6 of the 7 victims went missing on a Wednesday. The only thing that was different about them was the age range, which was between 11 to 50 years old. There was only ever one man who was arrested and tried for these murders, but he was later found innocent, which leaves all of these murders officially unsolved. On top of that, the statute of limitations has expired for all of the victims except for the final 3. And at number 4, the Kumatori chain. In 1992, between the months of June and July, 5 members of a motorcycle gang committed suicide within 0.7 miles of each other in Osaka. Packed suicides aren't exactly uncommon, but after examining the bodies, the police were convinced that this was staged to look like a packed suicide and that foul play was involved. 3 of the victims in particular gave them reasons to believe these deaths were against their will. For example, one of the young men had horizontal rope marks around his neck, whereas if this was a suicide, there would have been diagonal marks. Next, one of the girls was found with stab wounds on her neck and chest. And for the 3rd victim, he was found hanging from a chestnut tree, but police say there was no clear indication on how he climbed the tree prior to his death. It was then brought up that several of these young gang members reported being stalked at some point before the suicide, but no one was ever interviewed.
So I'm a bit of an unsolved mysteries addict, and I immediately thought about the Up in Smoke episode from season 9 when the powers that me asked me to talk about Ed and Lorraine today. So this episode examined 3 cases of spontaneous human combustion, 2 of which ended in death, with the 3rd being that of Kay Fletcher, a woman who says that one morning her back started emitting smoke that smelled like burned flesh, but she was unharmed. One expert said that SHC could be the result of internal electric currents causing a spark that ignites the body like a wick. Well, one skeptic was like, yeah, okay. Once again, Ed Warren would have had some answers. I'm no expert, but it sounds like demonic possession to me. Now, which demon? That I can't answer without knowing more. My knowledge isn't specific enough. But some demon out there had to be involved with this. I know this is a redundant statement to most, but throughout history there have been multiple paninis that have brought the entire world to a standstill. Well, we all know about the most recent one. It turns out that one of the least known ones is the sleeping sickness of the early 20th century. To be specific, between 1915 and 1926, around the same time the influenza thing ravaged the world, a sleeping disease claimed the lives of more than 500,000 people. Known scientifically as encephalitis lethargica, this disease left sufferers in a statue-like condition, unable to speak or move their bodies. In fact, some patients who survived it reportedly never gained full control of their motor functions ever again. Although the disease mysteriously just disappeared in 1927, scientists remain puzzled over its origin and cause, as well as how was this transmitted? I don't know, folks. Sounds pretty supernatural to me. Alrighty, we're ending today with another case I learned about from an Unsolved Mysteries episode. So 2 weeks after disappearing in 1989, Cindy James was found dead near an abandoned house with her arms and legs bound behind her back and a nylon stocking around her neck. An autopsy revealed that her actual cause of death was a not-so-fun substance situation, and the police ruled it a self-inflicted death, which would be bizarre enough on its own had James not reported being harassed and physically attacked by an unknown assailant for the last 7 years. She first received threatening notes and phone calls, discovered dead cats hanging in her garden, had her phone wires cut, her house was nearly burned down, and was attacked 5 times. Once in her home where she was impaled through the hand with a paring kitchen utensil, and another time when she was found battered and suffered from hypothermia in a ditch on the side of the road. So the police, who they never tested for prints, never thoroughly searched for evidence, they were like, you're making this up. Sure, because somebody's gonna go to those lengths to make up a story. A lot of that isn't even possible to self-inflict. So after her death, one doctor was like, oh, you know what? I think she's got multiple personalities, and one of the split Cindys killed the other. If I'm starting to sound angry, it's because I am, folks. She was tormented for 7 years and ended up dead. According to experts, this has always been a real puzzler, and it's like, yeah, you don't say. It's really hard to believe that she could have taken the substances and then also hogtied herself. Look, I think we can rule out an accident. As for the multiple personalities claim, well, it's a theory. I know Ozzy Caben, the private investigator who worked with her for years, was absolutely certain she was being stalked and then she was killed. Her family didn't think she was having any psychological issues. It's just hard to imagine somebody inflicting that kind of pain, where there's actually a weapon going through her hand. The big question is, who would keep this up for 7 years? Some folks really thought this girl was possessed, and look, I know Ed Warren would have absolutely proven them wrong in an instant and believed and advocated for this poor girl. He would have known this wasn't demonic possession or multiple personalities.